everyone. I think we will get going. Good morning. My name is Justin Paddock, and I would like to call the November 14th, 2024 Bureau of Household Goods and Services Advisory Council meeting to order. This morning is going to be a hybrid meeting. We have Steve and Sarah in the room, and we have our other council members joining by WebEx. So with that, I think I'll take just a roll call vote if everyone wants to be ready on their mute buttons. Pascal?
Good morning, present.
Bert?
Good morning. I'm here.
Tom?
Here, thank you.
Sarah in the room?
Present.
Dan?
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning, Dan. Toby?
Good morning.
Good morning. And Steve?
Yes, good morning.
All right, we have everyone here and we have a council. Thank you. I'd also like to welcome a few staff joining us remotely, including Karina Moreno with Board and Bureau Relations, as well as Ann Fisher, who has been very patient with us this week, working through several technical issues. So we want to thank Ann. She's actually going to be our moderator today as well. In the room, we also have Shelley with DCA Legal, who's providing backup for Helen today. And I think that's it for those. And then we also actually have several staff from the DCA Budgets Office who will be giving us a briefing on agenda item number 4. Before we move on, Ann, would you mind just walking all the participants through how public comment is going to work today?
Absolutely. Each speaker who wishes to comment will get 3 minutes with a 30-second warning. And the methods we're using for comment are the hand raise if you're on WebEx, which is the hand icon at the bottom row of your computer screen. The people in the room should raise their hand as well to get the attention of the council. And then if you would like, there's also a WebEx Q&A feature we'll turn on. That'll be a question mark icon. You can click that, type the word comment into the text box and click send. And we will attempt to make time for everyone. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ann. Just for those of us in the room, there's a couple of exits to get out of the building, just over to my right. If anyone needs to use the restroom, there is a badge against the wall. You can just put it on that black reader. And with that, I will move on to agenda item number 2, which is public comment on any items that are not on the agenda. What I will caution is anyone who wants to provide comment at this time, if you have an application, a complaint, or disciplinary charges pending before the Bureau, we ask that you not discuss the details of your case or about a pending complaint before the council. Also, if your comments are related to a specific agenda item, we usually recommend you wait for that particular agenda item to make your comments, but you're also welcome to make those now. Today, we're going to be asking public comment is restricted to 3 minutes per commenter. And with that, I'll just ask the council members in the room if anyone wants to make any comments at this time. Any council members online who'd like to make any comments at this time? All right, and seeing no members of the public at the moment in the room, and I'm going to open it up to public comments online.
Certainly. If anyone would like to make a comment on an item that's not already on the agenda, you can look for the question mark icon and click that, type the word comment and click send. You can click on the hand icon that will raise your hand, and any call-in users can press *3 to raise their hand. As stated, each speaker will have 3 minutes with a 30-second warning. Anyone have any issues that they would like to speak on that are not already on the agenda? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close the public comment feature?
Yes, thank you so much, Ann.
You're welcome.
With that, we will move on to agenda item number 3, which is an update from the Department of Consumer Affairs Board and Bureau of Relations. I will hand it over to Karina.
Good morning. My name is Karina Moreno of the California Department of Consumer Affairs. Thank you for the opportunity to join you today. I'd like to thank all members who serve to protect the public. First is DEI update. Uh-oh, did I lose you? Can you guys still hear me?
Oh, no,
Yep.
Karina, we can see and hear you. You can keep going.
Perfect, thank you. DEI update. DCA's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Steering Committee met last month, and we are excited to announce its newly elected leadership. Reggie Varghese, Medical Board of California's Executive Director, will serve as chair, and Marlon McManus, the Board of Behavioral Sciences Assistant Executive Officer, will serve as vice chair. With Reggie and Marlon's years of experience and sincere commitment, we greatly look forward to accomplishing many DEI initiatives under their leadership. New unconscious bias training for board members. I'm also excited to share that DCA is updating its current unveiling unconscious bias training to specifically focus on board members, your critical roles, and how unconscious bias can affect your decision-making authority. The training will be self-paced and available in DCA's online learning management system, LMS. We anticipate launching this new training in early 2025, and board members will be required to take it annually. As a reminder, DCA offers over 20 online DEI training courses in its learning management system. While these courses are not mandatory, board members and board leaders are strongly encouraged to take these trainings, as you are instrumental in leading department-wide change. Next is the Military Licensing Resources webinar. To support and maximize outreach to our military community, DCA is hosting a second live webinar on November 21st, 2024, to share information about military licensing resources. During the webinar, attendees will learn about licensing resources available to members of the military and their spouses or domestic partners. The webinar will also feature a demonstration of DCA's Federal Professional License Portal and state registration process, which was launched last fall, as well as a Q&A session. Webinar details and information will be available at www.dca.ca.gov/military. Next is the New Business and Travel Expense Reimbursement Program. The State Department of Human Resources, also known as CalHR, recently released an updated travel policy to align with the federal policies outlined by the U.S. General Services Administration. Effective October 1st, 2024, DCA will use federal standard meals and incidental expense rates for in-state and out-of-state travel. DCA will also use the federal standard and non-standard reimbursement lodging rates. Information on these changes was shared with board leaders at the end of September. Board members are encouraged to become familiar with the new travel expense reimbursement programs and rates. Please contact Board and Bureau Relations with any questions regarding these changes. Next is Season of Giving. We're officially in the Season of Giving, and DCA is honored to join in annual charitable campaigns launching this month. State's Our Promise campaign and the Turkey Drive. Turkey Drive, DCA held its third annual Turkey Drive yesterday, November 13th, 2024, with donations benefiting Joey's Food Locker, a local food bank located near DCA's headquarters in Sacramento. The items collected during the event are part of a larger state employees food drive, and that takes place later this month as well. DCA will announce the collection box locations later in the month. Our Promise campaign launch, State Employees Giving at Work campaign. Every year through the Our Promise California State Employees Charitable Campaign, state employees, including board members, have the opportunity to support the nonprofit causes they are passionate about through payroll giving or one-time donations. These contributions have a positive impact on our communities and is another way for DCA to show it cares for California. This year's campaign is led by Monica Vargas, Deputy Director of Communications, and Karen Navarro, Assistant Deputy Director of Communications. DCA's campaign officially launches on November 18th and runs through December 31st. In the meantime, please contact Board and Bureau Relations with any questions you like information on how you can give. Again, thank you for the opportunity to join you today. I'm happy to answer any questions from the Advisory Council.
Thank you so much, Karina. Any questions from the council in the room? Any questions from council online? Right. No members of the public are in the room at the moment, so Anne, I'll open it up to public comment online.
Super. If anyone would like to make a comment on the DCA report, you may look for the hand icon and click that to raise your hand. You may look for the question mark icon, click that, type the word comment into the text box and click send. And our call-in users may press *3 to raise their hands. Are there any comments on the DCA update? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, thank you so much, Ann. Karina, thank
You're
you so much for the update.
Thank you.
All right, with that, we will move on to agenda item number 4, our fiscal update. And I believe I saw Suzanne on, but I'll hand it off to the fiscal office for that presentation.
Thank you. Can we promote Ryan, please? He's going to be presenting.
Oh, sure.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I think Ryan's on the panel, yeah.
Yes.
Good morning. My name is Ryan Harrington, and I'm the budget analyst with the DCA. I'm here with Suzanne Balkus, the budget manager. I want to thank the Bureau and the Advisory Council members for allowing me time to present today. I'm here to present the 2024-25 FM3 fund condition. Please refer to agenda item 4, page 2 of your meeting materials. The attached fund condition statements are based on the 2024 Budget Act. We read this document top to bottom and left to right. The left column is prior year, and what would be zero since the transfer to the new fund occurred in 24-25. For the 2024-25 current year, based on fiscal month 3 data, the Bureau projects an estimate of 11.2 million in revenue. There was a revenue transfer to the Motor Carrier Safety Improvement Fund of about $21,000. The transfer from 0325 fund to 3438, which is the new fund, for 2.2 million. There was a transfer from 0752 to 3438 for 5.5 million. And lastly, the transfer from 3315 to 3438 for 7.3 million. The Bureau's expenditures as of fiscal month 3 are projected to be approximately 13.5 million. That gives you a fund balance of 12.7 million, which is about 10.1 months in reserve. Budget year is based on Budget Act, and the budget year +1 is based on realized. The Bureau is estimating an additional transfer in 25-26 from the 3 funds remaining balance. To note, these amounts could change since the funds are open for any prior year unpaid or late invoices. Based on SB 814, all remaining balance transfers should occur prior to July 1st of 2026. A few things to note of the Bureau fund condition. The fund condition is a snapshot in time and thus only a reflection of data used in its creation. One of the main factors driving expenditure increases in future years is a result of personnel service adjustments. These include general salary increases, GSI, as well as employee compensation and retirement rate adjustments. The Budget Office includes an ongoing 3% increase to expenditures on the fund condition statement to account for these ongoing incremental adjustments. The fund condition does not include increased enforcement expenditures, which could create additional cost pressure on the Bureau's fund in outer years. The Budget Office will continue to work with the Bureau on any future resources needed. Months in reserve will always be going down in out years as we project revenues to remain constant and expenditures to increase by 3% mentioned previously. And lastly, we'd like to note to the Bureau that any future legislation or unanticipated events could result in the Bureau needing additional resources, which could increase pressure on the fund. The Budget Office will continue to monitor the Bureau's fund condition statement and keep the line of communication with the Bureau's chief open for any future expectations. And if the board or Bureau has any questions, we'd be more than happy to answer them.
Thank you so much, Ryan. So as you guys can probably assume, I am bugging Suzanne and Ryan a lot. But before I sort of open this up to comment, I just wanted to provide some summary on what we put together on page 3 and 4 of your packet. So the first thing is, you'll note I can't really do what I've done in the past at the request of Tom and I think Pascal and Steve. because we're 5 months into the new fund, I can't really show you historically what we've done in the past as far as the last times we reported expenditure and revenue. I do plan to do that for the next council meeting. That'll be relatively straightforward because we'll be able to use the numbers. Yep, Claire's writing down my first promise. Because we'll be able to report, we'll show the numbers we reported to you today, and moving forward, we'll be able to do what historically I was able to provide. The other thing that I did is I went back and watched a lot of all of the fiscal updates I provided you over the last 3 years, because a lot of times we're talking about reversion and a few other things, and that is the reason for the table that you see on number 4. As usual, I am trying to be Eeyore when it comes to my budget. I am being very pessimistic, especially the most important thing here. I'm essentially assuming that revenues stay flat while expenditures increase. I'm more than confident that expenditures will continue to increase just as payroll is always going to slowly rise as the various bargaining units negotiate raises over time as appropriate. I actually am pleasantly surprised at our fiscal month 3 revenue report. We're actually doing better. We're doing significantly better than I thought we would at this time in the budget year. So I don't want to be too optimistic, but I actually do think our revenues will increase. But for planning purposes, I'm planning for them to be flat. And then, as Ryan was mentioning, in the first box, which is our current year, there's a total out of all of those 3 funds, almost $15 million that got transferred into the new fund. And within, by July of, I want to say it's 26, I think it's said. The final transfer will occur, and those 3 older historic funds will be shut down. In my document here, I'm assuming that about $3 million comes over, and I believe I'm assuming about $250,000 is going to be going to various things that I just haven't accounted for yet that are sort of scheduled in arrears for most state agencies. With that being said, last I want to talk about the reversion. So the reversion, just as a reminder for everyone, is historically the Bureau does not spend all the money it's appropriated for. So the legislature and the governor allow us to spend a certain amount of money each year, but we typically don't spend that full amount. Whatever we don't spend reverts back into our fund. Historically, that's been about $3 million. I'm assuming it's going to be about $1.5 million, and that's having worked very closely with the budget office for a few reasons. One of which is, just as I mentioned, and as Ryan mentioned, salaries are going up. A second reason is our vacancy rate, much to the thanks of our admin unit and Kelly and Claire, our vacancy rate is below 10% for the first time since I've been here. So as you may recall, our vacancy rate was around 30%. And just by the fact that, we're putting more paychecks out there on payroll, we're assuming less reversion this year. So the assumption in the out years is we'll revert somewhere in the neighborhood of $1.5 million a year. Last but not least, before I open this up to comment, just to have in the back of your heads the general timeline of what the Bureau is doing. In 2026, we will be writing our sunset review report, and we will be before the legislature in 2027. And that if the Bureau needs a fee increase because its coffers are essentially getting lighter and lighter, that's when it would pursue such a fee increase, most likely, unless it was in some sort of dire circumstance. As you can see from the projections that I have, I feel like we're going to be walking into our sunset year with at least 9 months in reserve, which is healthy, but it still is going down. There is still going to be a structural deficit that we will need to address. We would plan to do that as part of our larger fee study that you're all familiar with, where we're going to actually essentially audit where we spend our time and resources and all, what I'm going to say for the first time, 4 programs. Typically, we bundle service contracts and service dealers into one program. I actually think it's appropriate to consider them as 4 different programs. And so with that, I've said a lot. I'm going to open it up to comment in the room first. Yes, Steve.
Yeah, so we were supportive of the combining of the funds basically because of the expenditure issue. So we understand the accounting challenges of that. But on the revenue side, I really would like to see more of a breakdown basically between the 4 groups of how that revenue comes in. That I think that'd be very helpful for us to know that. The expenditure side, we understand, but the revenue side seems to be relatively easy to break out.
When you want the breakdown on the revenue side, would it be as simple as showing you the 4 categories, or do you need more detail? For you, it won't matter because everyone's a household mover, but in the other categories, there's a lot of different license types.
Yeah, well, then for me, for my purposes, I just need to see my group, what's coming in permits and fees and what's coming in fines, that sort of thing. Individual breakdown of that, but.
Got it. Do you want to break down then of your standard fee, your any sort of delinquencies and any sort of fines? You want to break down that?
Right, and also since we're going to be rolling in a new group in 2025, what the application fee, maybe have that as a separate item too.
To your point, just because I want to make sure I speak to this, I would have to talk with the budget's office if you would want to see the difference in revenue for interstate movers, because I think that will be really tricky.
I don't need it broken down that refi. Just I'll make some kind of assumptions, but I would want to have application, which would be the same number.
Right.
Or,
But you would have your traditional intra $500 as well as your inter $500. Okay. I'm writing that. And so just to be clear, I'm not yet making that promise because I do want to follow up with budget staff and sort of see what the workload is. But I do want to I was asking you questions because I want to know the ask better. Yeah. And then just before I open it up online, any other comments on the? Okay, for council members online.
Tom Keepers there. I would agree with the proposal to break it out. Thanks.
Got it. All right. And then Tom, just because your license types are a little bit different, if I sort of lump service dealers, admins all together as a source of revenue, is that acceptable, or do you need more detail?
I don't think we need more detail in the report.
Okay.
Even though you said earlier you were going to unbundle them in some way.
As far as from a policy perspective, when we're talking about the sunset report, I think it's appropriate that we consider these as 4 camps.
Yeah. If we need a further breakout, I would just work with you guys just for a discrete analysis if necessary.
Okay. Understood.
Thanks.
Okay. Any other council member comment online? Any public comment in the room? All right, Ann, I'll open it up to public comment online.
Thank you. We're displaying instructions on the screen. If anyone would like to make a comment on the budget report or the fiscal update, you may look for the hand icon and click that to raise your hand. You may look for the question mark icon, click that, type the word comment into the text box and click send. Each speaker will have 3 minutes with a 30-second warning. Are there any comments on the fiscal report? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, thank you so much, Ann.
You bet.
Ryan and Suzanne, thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thanks. All right, moving on to agenda item number 5. This is a review of the Bureau's 2022 through 2026 strategic plan. Just to give the council background, it's actually on page 6 and 7 of your packet. As part of the governor's executive order, all state agencies were asked to essentially review their sort of policies, their documents, and their procedures to consider the principles of diversity, equity, and inclusion. The Department of Consumer Affairs, as part of that process, essentially is outlining the arrows that you see on page 6. That each of the programs within the Department of Consumer Affairs is evaluating its strategic plan to make updates to that plan. What happened this spring and summer was an environmental scan was developed by Solid as well. Ann actually headed it up. And that was released to council members, members of staff here at the Bureau, as well as stakeholders. We got a total of 83 responses, so we appreciate that. I know we had quite a few council member responses as well. Just to sort of summarize the feedback that we got through that survey, there was a lot of, there was essentially 3 takeaways that were fairly consistent with that feedback, that the Bureau should continue to seek feedback from the outside on the various things that it's going to be doing. Number 2, it should make its services accessible online to all types of community groups. And that the Bureau should, the third point was that the Bureau should continue to expand its outreach. So those were sort of the general comments that we got pretty consistently throughout our survey. On October 30th, several Bureau staff met with Solid and Ann to essentially review the strategic plan and make considerations for updates. That strategic session went very well. We've identified a few areas within the plan where we're essentially going to be updating language and making sure that we're being consistent with the policy, but we didn't identify any new strategic plan objectives outside of the plan that you're all familiar with. The next step in the process is the Bureau's finalizing that with Solid. In the next couple of weeks before the Thanksgiving break, we'll be submitting that to the director for her review. After her review, we'll be providing that to the council in draft form. And then after that, if there's no additional comments, we will move with finalizing and publishing the updated strategic plan on our website. And then we'll move on to the last phase that you see on page 6, which is the action planning process. With that, I try to provide a quick summary on where we're at. Are there any comment from council members in the room on these updates? Any comments from council members online?
Hey, Justin, this is Tom Keepers. I've got a belated compliment of getting your vacancy rate down. I know that's been a challenge from a personnel perspective, so that's a nice job by the department. That's not easy to accomplish, so well done.
Thank you very much. That really is the work of Kelly and Claire and their staff. I know, especially Marie, Sue, quite a few people really came together to make that possible. It's not an easy feat in state service, so it is. Thank you, Tom. We appreciate that. Any additional comment from council members online? All right. Any public comment from the room? Seeing none, Ann will open it to public comment online.
Thank you. If anyone would like to make a comment on the strategic plan update, you may look for the hand icon and click that to raise your hand. You may look for the question mark icon, click that, type the word comment into the text box and click send. And each speaker will have 3 minutes with a 30-second warning. Any comments on the strategic plan update? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, thank you, Ann. All right, we are going to move on to agenda item number 6, which is our business modernization update. And Deputy Chief Claire Goldstein will provide that presentation.
All right, thank you. So I just want to point out a couple of things that were in the packet, especially since the meeting, the last council meeting in May. So additional features with Connect are the, you can now, on the DCA license lookup, you can now search for a license using the DBA. And you can also see some additional information. So this was an update in Connect from July. You can also, they've made it easier when licensees are entering their CalT number, so that if they're struggling with the exact format, it now doesn't matter. This may seem like a very small fix, but it was actually a huge fix because this was the #1 reason that people were calling and struggling with Connect is that they were struggling with the exact format of how to enter their CalT number, and there's a space, is there a no space, and so that's been fixed. So whatever they enter, it will recognize however they enter their CalT numbers. So that was the big fix, and it really helped reduce the number of phone calls to staff and hopefully the frustration for users. The other thing is the quarterly report is fully online now for household movers, and I'm really happy to share that we've seen a pretty significant increase in the number of people that are filing online. So this has reduced the workload in the office for having to deal with the paper applications, and it has also, hopefully, I assume, has made it easier for licensees because it does all of the mathematical calculations. And if you pay with a credit card, you're done. So that, I think, is a real success. The other thing between since the last council meeting is we put online the household mover transfer application. And I just want to mention about that, though we don't get a significant number of transfer applications each year, we took that as an opportunity to make some pretty significant changes to the application. The transfer application and the initial application are about 95% the same. So we made a lot of improvements in terms of the flow, the language, tried to clarify the language for applicants so it's a little bit easier, or reordered the presentation. So that was, though we don't get a lot of applications, it was a significant lift. And one of the priorities between now, hopefully the end of the year, maybe the first part of 2025, is to migrate those improvements that were made in the transfer application to the initial application, and make that application easier for people to navigate when they're applying. The last thing that we have completed, we're close to completion since the May meeting, is the ability for licensees to add or delete a DBA through their Connect account and to change their contact information and address. So they'll be able to go into Connect and do that. We're very close to making that public. So we have other license maintenance features in process. That is to change your exam qualifier, cancel your license, update your insurance. So the goal is for people to be able to go into their Connect account and really manage their license through the Connect account. And we're also working on finalizing automatic notifications. So users will receive an email that the quarterly report is due or their insurance is about to lapse. Be sure to upload information about renewed insurance. So these are the things that we're working on. In addition to, I would say that one of the main priorities between now and the end of the year is getting the interstate license up and running. So that is legally goes into effect on January 1. These are for movers who are doing interstate only, and that application will be on Connect. We are working really closely with the IT team to get that up and running, and it is going to be a simpler application than that for those who do intrastate moves or those who do both. It will still be a $500 fee, but there's no exam. You're not going to be fingerprinted. You're not going to be providing insurance information. So it's a much simpler exam. The big difference is what you do have to provide is an agent of process. You have to identify somebody in California that if the Bureau needs to take enforcement action, there's somebody in California that where we can serve those papers. So that's a required part of the application. And applicants will need to provide their FMCSA DOT number as part of the application. But that will all be on Connect, and that is the top priority between now and the end of the year to meet the legal mandate. The other thing I'll just mention about where we are in the sort of the larger scope of the project is that our current contract ends November 15th, which is tomorrow. So we move to what's called a maintenance and operations phase. And so what we are planning to do at the Bureau in the coming months is to develop internally all aspects of the online processes for EAR and Hefty applications, for renewals for EAR and Hefty, for the online payment of fines, for the thermal insulation directory and all other elements of enforcement. We're going to use that to as an opportunity to really think through our processes. We want to move away from simply taking our paper process and putting it online. We really want to take this as an opportunity to make some improvements for applicants, licensees, as well as the staff. Then we want to use that really detailed analysis to inform the next contract, because we're going to have to enter into a new contract for all the other elements of Connect that are not yet built. And we expect that to begin at the start of the 25-26 fiscal year. And then the last thing I'll mention about that contract is that unlike the current contract where we are part of a cohort of other DCA boards and bureaus, this contract going forward will be the bureaus alone. And so we have the opportunity to be very specific and particular about what our needs are to make sure those are met for everything else we need to do going forward. So I'll ask if there are any questions or comments from council members in the room.
Yes, first off, on the application process, have we now switched the costs to the applicants for the live scan and the testing process? Is that now being paid by the applicants?
No. So we attempted to do that through our sunset, and it wasn't taken up in the bill. And so my hope is that we'll try again with our next sunset.
And
because that requires a statutory change.
okay, thank you. On the interstate mover, that's going to be a really, really important step, and I'm most concerned with how that's represented to the public. So because there's going to be an educational process, because they're going to be seeing two lists, and we need to have very clear demarcation about the differences and abilities of those two different classes of permits. So we need to make sure that the clarity of that on the public-facing list that's a critical element that I want to make sure we focus on.
So when you say list, what we have in our head is we're actually designing a disclaimer when you do the license lookup. So I'm going to give you an example, and I'm just going to pick on you and Jacqueline. We'll say Jacqueline is interstate only, and you're both, Steve. When I do a license lookup for you, I'm just seeing you, household mover, your permit number, your insurance information. When I do a license lookup on Jacqueline, I would see an asterisk and an explanation of what she is authorized to do. We're actually working on a disclaimer right now. As far as a list, we don't really have, because I know because you've done it, you can do a PRA for such a list, but we wouldn't actually populate that online. Does that make sense?
It does, just as long as it's much more detailed than interstate versus intrastate, because I would say even people in industry cannot get that correct.
It would be, go on.
So I can also mention, this is something that Jacqueline and I, when we've been having meetings with the Connect folks, this has been a priority part of the conversation. How is a consumer who's doing a license lookup going to understand the difference? What does this mean? And so we've had conversations about how it's going to appear on the page, what the language is going to be. And now it's my turn to make a promise, Justin, so feel free to write it down.
Right.
I can promise you that we are absolutely committed to making that language understandable for the consumer. And that's just part of what we're trying to do with the entire application, is take away the jargon and make it understandable. So this is conversation that we've already had. And so we're hoping the Connect folks are really busy right now trying to finish out this week all the commitments to the final contract. And then this will be taken up next week. But we've already had many conversations, and how that's going to be distinguished is part of it. And we've also had conversations with Joanne about the outreach effort for this to make sure that movers are made aware. And it will be part of the public outreach that we do going forward as well, that this is a distinction that consumers should be looking for when they go to hire a mover.
And just one other thing, we're happy to provide a screenshot once we've got one for whichever council members. I assume, Steve, you want to see it. If anybody else wants to see it, just let me know.
Yeah, excuse
I'm
me,
doing
Chair,
outreach,
this is
but I just.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Did you
Claire, I'm
see-
sorry, this is
were
for
you-
Grimes. Quick question is, when will the other groups, you said fiscal year 25, 26 before we're online?
It will be, so we at the Bureau will have to enter into a new contract with
Yeah.
the vendor. And so we expect that contract to be in effect starting the new fiscal year,
Which would be July 1.
which would be July 1 of 25. And then there's the process of actually building the content. So realistically, it will be some number of months after that before we would have anything online. I want to be very careful. I cannot promise this, but I would imagine that one of the first things we would focus on would be renewals, because that involves the most number of licensees, and it's generally a more straightforward process. And that's something that we would prioritize probably for the Hufty, Aaron Hufty, to get those renewals online as quickly as possible.
And the only thing I
So-
would add is right behind renewals would be modifying any information with your business.
And so
Address change, phone number change.
we're probably looking, what, about a year and a half from now before it would be complete? Guessing.
It is possible. It's what I would say. Let's see, we're in November. You're probably going to see some functionality by the end of calendar year of 25. But yeah, what I would say, Bert, because I think I'm to your point, there are delays with this just because we do want to get it right.
And if I can just add to that again, it's hard to know exactly, but just two things. One, we having sort of made the Household Movers program the guinea pig, we've learned a tremendous amount about how to do this. And I'm really hopeful that we can take that knowledge and make it a much smoother process for the Aaron Hufty side. And the second thing is because all of the work that we're going to be doing internally and with the IT people before we enter into the contract, we are going to already have a very clear vision of how we want this to work for Aaron Hufty before we enter into the contract. And that will also help that process go more smoothly and more quickly. These things should be quicker to build because we will be better prepared. Sorry, I think I just threw somebody under the bus, but that's just yeah.
To Claire's point, I think the way that we've been doing it through this current process is you're sort of building the blueprint and then just building the track right after. Whereas the plan in the early part of the year, while we have to go through the contracting process, which appropriately does take time, is we're going to do the blueprint so that by the time the contract is in place, it's building. If that makes sense.
Yes, thank you
Are there
for
any
clarification.
Are there any other? Okay, yeah. Are there any other council comments online? Any other council comments in the room?
Yeah, thank you. And just going back to the interstate mover, that, getting that message out is going to be critical. Joanne's done a good job in the past. I would just ask that they communicate with us so that we can share it broadly with our constituents as well, because that's, we started that in our newsletter, but to have some of the Instagram, some of the other stuff that we can use.
I can assure you, you're on the plan. You're on the outreach plan. Yep. All right. I think that's it for council. Are there any questions or comments from public in the room? Nope. Okay. Anne, can you open up the public comment online, please?
Absolutely. If anyone would like to make a comment, you can look for the question mark icon and click that, type the word comment into the text box and click send, or you may look for the hand icon and click that to raise your hand. Each speaker will have 3 minutes with a 30-second warning. Are there any comments on the business modernization update? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, thank you, Anne.
You're welcome.
All right, and now I believe I am turning it over to Council Member Tom Keepers and Justin, who are going to talk about the world of service contracts.
Yeah, so I think as we get the PowerPoint set up that Tom's going to do, I'll just do a quick intro, Tom, if that works, then I'll hand it off to you and Travis.
Sounds great.
So Tom's day job is he's actually the president of the Service Contract Industry Council, and now I'm going to try to do this really quickly to see if I can. Travis is the Service Contract Industry Council's counsel. So that's a little bit of a mouthful. They're going to shortly provide you just sort of an overview, and this is going to be very similar to what we did last year with the Ignition Interlock Device Program, but for service contracts. One of the things I'll ask the council member and those participating online today to sort of keep in the back of your head is as we're walking into 2026 where we're writing our sunset report, we would like to spend 2025 doing whatever research that we should be doing to make any potential changes in our laws, our regulations around how we regulate the service contract industry. So the point of Tom's presentation today and our discussion after is to sort of start that conversation and thinking about what, if any, changes we want to see as part of our next sunset report. With that, I'm going to hand it off to Tom and Travis. Thank you.
That sounds great. Can you hear me okay, Chief Paddock?
Yep.
Good. So thanks, everyone, and happy Thursday to you. I would like to clarify, Travis is more than counsel. He's actually general counsel. So he's also the general on our team. So, but more seriously, I'll go through and we're going to do really just an overview, kind of start with the basics around service contracts. Talk a little bit about who we are to start out. We've got a blurb on consumer views, which admittedly is an area of we'd like to see further research on, and then we'll segue into kind of what's the general approach to regulation, and have a conversation. I think that Chief Paddock may want to jump in here too on what we're doing in California. All right, so about the Service Contract Industry Council, it's a national trade that's been around for quite some time. We have about 75-ish member companies, and we continue to grow. You can see the list on the screen if you can see the screen, but it's essentially in companies that are in the market to provide these products ultimately to consumers. They may provide them through realtors. They might provide them through the auto dealers. They might provide them through sales staff. They might provide them through things like kiosks and big box stores and online and things of that nature. But the trade, again, been around for quite a while and has been a real leader, I think, in the industry. And we'll touch on the National Association of Insurance Commissioners a little bit later. Just from a management perspective, our team, we have a team of 4 virtual team that manages 2 other trade associations, one related to gap waiver, which I won't go into, and the other related to a series of ancillary products that are also available on motor vehicles like paintless dent and tire and wheel and things of that nature. So a little bit about us. The trade is, in a way, a very conventional trade association. We do monitoring and we do advocacy for legislative and regulatory matters. I would also say we do provide those same services to our member companies for litigation matters as well, whether it's filing an amicus brief on an issue or just monitoring that issue and make sure that we're flagging it and helping our members understand what's going on. As a trade association, we help member companies of varying sizes. We're either an extension of their regulatory compliance team, or we may very well be their kind of sole source of information. We also offer up a series of compliance resources that help our members as they look at requirements in states and staying compliant there. I will tell you that as a trade association, we cannot provide legal advice. So that gets a little delicate sometimes, because some of you may know, if you're familiar with trades, you get questions from members and they'd like you to tell them what to do. We just have to explain what the requirements might be. All right. So what is a service contract? This is kind of that service contract one. at the highest level, most consumers think of these products as warranties. Extended warranties. What I'm sharing with you on the screen is the NEIC Model Act. This was the result of about 12 plus years of deliberation by the National Association of Insurance Commissioners. Generally speaking, service contracts are not insurance, so we can talk a little bit about that today as well. But what you'll see there is it's basically a two-party agreement generally, but a contractor agreement for separately stated consideration. And here's where we differentiate between what we call a service contract and what you might think of as a warranty that comes with a product, or what we call an original equipment or original manufacturer warranty, whether it comes with your phone, comes with your new car, things of that nature. That's where service contracts are different. They don't come with, they're actually very, very much so purchased separately for separate consideration. But you can see there, for a specific duration to perform the repair or replacement or maintenance of property, or its indemnification for those very same services for the operational or structural failure due to defect in materials, workmanship, or normal wear and tear. Normal wear and tear. So this is where we get into talking about, well, indemnification kind of smells like insurance, and they're insurance-y, but they fit in this regulatory niche where they're really not insurance. And again, after 12 years, the NEIC said, well, we'll do a Model Act, but we're not going to consider them insurance, and we're not generally insurance in the statutory framework in the various states. But normal wear and tear is another example of where service contracts are different than insurance. When you think of insurance, generally speaking, it's usually low frequency, high severity, a car accident, a fire on a house, whereas service contracts are the opposite. Service contracts are really high frequency, generally low severity. You have an issue with your phone, or you have an issue with a water heater. Those are generally not high severity, as high as insurance, but there is certainly a high frequency of claim under service contracts generally. You'll notice also this idea of towing and rental emergency road service. Those aren't usually the kinds of things that you might see on the insurance side, but those are services that can be allowed under a service contract. What questions, or Travis, I know Travis Moore is a panelist with us. Any comments you wanted to add to what is a service contract, Travis?
I think you did a great job. I mean, it really is this niche. I always like to think of it as a complement to insurance. As you noted, insurance sort of covers the extremes, the completely, unexpected fortuitous events. But we all know that, if you're a homeowner, or in this case, we're talking about consumer goods, but all of the different gadgets and things we buy, as much as we'd like to think they last forever, nothing really does. And so service contracts kind of fill this void where it may not be an insurable event, but you're able to get some sort of redress, have this third party entity indemnify that loss, and help consumers really keep their budget steady.
Thank you, Travis. Which is a great segue into what really are these things. I mean, service contracts are generally designed around helping consumers with cash flows, right? So we know from the Federal Reserve reports, I think it's upper 30% of US households have trouble covering, they're challenged by a $400 expense. Well, a lot of these perils that, or I should say assets you see on the screen, involve those types of expenses. So the categories of service contracts then are consumer goods, which you can see the list there: cell phones, appliances, things like that; home service contracts, and I'll get into that in a minute; and then vehicle. On the consumer goods side, you'll notice things like protection plans, or again, extended warranties. There's a group of appliances that can be covered under consumer goods. And by the way, this is where we're closest to the Bureau of Household Goods and Services, if it's not painfully obvious. But also portable electronics and furniture. And, in this category, like others, the service contracts are really helping consumers impacting their daily lives. If, Sue or Jim's phone, Jimmy's phone runs out at school, or it's damaged, and mom and dad can't keep track of where he is when he goes off to soccer practice and then off to have pizza with some friends or something that night. It's very much embedded into our daily lives. On home service contracts, you have different categories like the whole home, major systems. You can go a la carte, but that's water heater, that's furnace, that's air conditioning, sewer, water line. Very much, again, helping cover perils that affect our daily lives. And then lastly, as much as pandemic has created a lot of remote work, there are a lot of people driving cars. Some of you might have seen that New York is reintroducing the congestion toll of $9. Well, they're trying to get people out of their cars to mass transit, but so many people drive. I know California is certainly no stranger to that. We need our vehicles to get to our jobs, right? We need our vehicles to get to commitments, family, friends, and otherwise. And so vehicle service contracts, or AKA extended warranties, help repair those vehicles and make sure that they're on the road. So from a benefit perspective, I talked about cash flows, covering their cost of repair. For some people, it won't upset their budget. For others, more paycheck to paycheck, it helps them make sure they can stay afloat. And then for the rest of us, I think I'm in the first category. We bought a Jeep that had all these bells and whistles and sensors on it, and I just I wanted the peace of mind that we didn't have to shell out a few $1,000s to repair that if something went bad. Again, this is mechanical failure, not damage. And so we had purchased a vehicle service contract for our Jeep a number of years ago, and I can tell you personally, I slept better at night. All right, how they work. This is where, and I know Chief Paddock brought this up. Yes, please.
Tom, but before you move on, if we can I just want to provide a quick summary, because this is going to come up sort of in our discussion. As Tom mentioned, that first group, the consumer goods services contract, that has been traditionally the department. It's relatively straightforward. Now I'm going to jump to the bottom, the vehicle service contract. That has been traditionally the California Department of Insurance. The interesting area that we raised in our sunset report, and it's very likely we'll raise it again in our next sunset report, is this middle category, the home service contracts. California historically has in the Civil Code a section on what's called a home protection contract, but the industry has evolved so much since that law was written. And this is sort of where the Bureau and the Department of Insurance try to work with each other, but there really is a legal gray area of who would regulate certain contracts. I think a great example is when you walk into, I'm just going to pick on Best Buy. If you walk into Best Buy, you buy an iPhone today, you can get an extended plan, and that would very clearly be covered by the Bureau. But you also have the option of looking at several providers online who can actually protect all of your portable electronics within your home. And it's a little less clear who would regulate that. And so that's one potential area for discussion. And so I just wanted to mention that, Tom, before you moved on. Thank you.
No, I appreciate you adding that. I did want to come to that as well, because it's blurry and could use, as we've discussed separately, could potentially stand some clarification. So how they work, I wasn't planning on draining this screen, but the things to think about there's this thing called an obligor that's noted in the first bullet, and then there's an administrator. And then there's a third party, which is who is going to repair or replace that device. And so you have three parties involved in this ecosystem, but there's actually a fourth not on the screen, and that's an insurance company. So the obligor is the company that is really legally obligated, that is, the terms and conditions, and then financially obligated to make sure that the obligor is viable. They'll be there when that promise to pay and pay a benefit comes later. Whereas the administrator is handling all the fees and the claims. They actually administer for an obligor. Sometimes it's the same entity, but it's important that there's this distinction. Behind the scenes, the insurer writes what we call a contractual liability insurance policy that says, hey, for all these obligations that the obligor is obligated under, we're going to insure that. And we'll see that in a minute in terms of the regulatory structure. But it's really, there is an entity missing on this page, and that is the insurance company. So you have 4 entities, legally obligated party, the administrator, who's doing all the work, and then you have the service that's performed separately, and those are independent contractors. The administrator, the obligor, the insurer, they don't have a thumb on those, or they don't have an army of service repair shops, let's say, necessarily. So I just wanted to get clear on kind of how those things work. The administrator's doing the work on the paper of the obligor, if you will, who has this insurance company that backs them up. The insurance company, of course, is completely and fully regulated by the insurance department in every state. Travis, what would you like to add to this slide, if anything?
Well, not to overcomplicate it, I think you named 4 categories, but also have to consider the retailer, right? So
yes,
whoever is at point of sale as
Yep.
another. So in theory, you kind of could have 5 distinct entities that are involved in how this actually gets done. So it can get a little complicated. Of course, one entity could be serving multiple of those 5 categories, but it is a little bit complicated.
Yeah, thank you for adding that. I did have the seller in the back of my mind, and I forgot to bring that up. And that is, a seller. Those entities are. There's some regulation there as well. From a consumer perspective, we don't have a lot of research on the consumer views. I did want to share a few things just to give you a sense for market size. So, $250 million or 250, what we call voluntary protection products, and service contract is one of those. It also includes those ancillary products, and then the products we support in the other trade, whether it's gap, waiver, excess wear and use. So there is they're very pervasive, and I'd like to think high value, high purchase rates by consumers in the United States. We did academic research a few years ago that was fielded by the University of Michigan Survey Research Center, and the paper was authored by 2 Federal Reserve senior economists and a professor out of Mississippi State that showed, 3 out of 4 purchases, at least on the vehicle side, would recommend the products to others. And the net promoters, that's generally thought of as a net promoter score. That's really high. So that's good. People, at least on vehicle, like the products. And then the other dimension of, especially now on consumer goods, a fair number of the products sold on consumer goods, for example, on your phone, have automatically renewing contracts. And this is important. The FTC just came out with a rule which gives us a fair amount of heartburn. But from a consumer perspective, you can see the statistics there. Well, there's a high percentage of people that have had something it breaks down after the service contract or the original warranty period ended. We had an issue. Well, I won't go into our issue. We had a refrigerator. I think it was 1 month expired, and you kind of look at the calendar and shake your head. But notably, almost 2/3 of those surveyed had said, you know what, I wish I had a contract that had an automatically renewing feature. And that's important too, again, because the Bureau is in the game of automatically renewing contracts, because the service contract industry makes those available to consumers. So opportunity for us from a trade perspective, and potentially, the Bureau and other policymakers, is what kind of research, we can put together that gets at consumer views on consumer goods. I will tell you our next potential research area is more on the home side for various reasons, but consumer goods is important. Just one thing, and Chief Paddock, we haven't talked about this, but we just don't hear of issues from policymakers on the consumer goods side. We hear more on the home side, actually, than anything else, more than vehicle, certainly. We just don't hear anything on the consumer side, which is why we've prioritized research lower than the other 2 product categories. All right, let's go
Tom,
into.
before we move on,
please.
could you just summarize sort of what you're hearing on the home side?
Well, on the home side, yeah, I'll summarize it. So the home side, the challenge is usually, and it goes back to the parties to the in the ecosystem, the providers of the products, which are the let's just say the administrators with obligors behind them, they don't control or own the service repair network. And, you know, some statistics show that we are actually in a bit of a crunch for service repair and home service types of companies. And so since they don't control them, it means getting a contractor out to consumer can be a challenge. Well, imagine that being, you know, 110 degrees in Arizona and someone's air conditioner goes out, or, you know, they're up in, you know, Minot, is it North Dakota, and their furnace goes out. There sometimes policymakers are led to believe or have the perception that the administrator is able to get a contractor sooner than a consumer would, and are trying to kind of, you know, delve into that, viewing, I think there's a misperception. They're viewing home service contracts as like an emergency service when they're really not. They're really just intended there, you know, to help get a repair done. So I would say that's probably the major theme. Travis, anything you'd like to add?
I mean, I think that is definitely the issue that draws the most attention. And I think, you know, as you can see with home, yeah, you have things that affect your health and well-being. Most consumer goods service contracts, you know, it's a nuisance to live without whatever product it is that's covered, but it's usually not a health crisis.
Thank you. Other questions before we proceed, or comments, Chief?
No, not from me.
Okay. Right. This is you know, I get to generalize, and Travis gets to be an attorney. From a regulatory perspective, there are some ample consumer protections. You know, from a business, commercial, business to business perspective, there's registration requirements. Importantly, there is financial assurance requirements to make sure, as I mentioned earlier, that the product is financially there to kind of quote pay when that moment of truth occurs, when a claim occurs. There are three different types of financial assurance. One is, as I described earlier, is to back all service contracts with a contractual liability insurance policy. Again, fully filed and reviewed for adequate financial adequacy by the departments of insurance in the states. You can also essentially have money on reserve with the state, and we call this a funded reserve. And typically, it's calculated according to that. That is in the NAIC Model Act. And then, lastly, if you have a significant net worth, then you can put down a parental guarantee. The last two elements of the general scheme are requirements on disclosures to consumers to make sure that the consumer contract contains certain information to make sure that the consumer is an informed consumer. And then lastly is the enforcement element. So depending upon who the regulator is, there are certainly enforcement authority, for that regulator. Those are the general 4 prongs, and they do you know, vary by different states. I would say all 3 of our trades, but also the Service Contract Industry Council, were kind of one of those. I like to tell policymakers we're a bit of an odd duck, because we generally like to go into states and make sure that there's expressed authority to offer the products. So with all due respect to Chief Paddock, so that we don't have a policymaker all of a sudden say, well, you can't do that, it's not authorized, or I think that's insurance, or I think that's something else. So we really generally like to pursue certainty for the membership and consistency across the states, because to the extent that there's variation among states, and that creates inefficiencies and compliance risk for companies. So the more that we can get uniformity across the states, it's very helpful in driving efficiencies. Generally speaking, for example, for a service contract, member companies like to design the contract of what we call the lowest common denominator, which means it'll satisfy as many states as possible. And that again helps drive efficiency, but importantly helps drive down risk from a compliance perspective. And then from there, for the other states, they might have to write a state-specific form. So consistency across the states, and obviously, Chief Paddock, that's a message to you. We love to have as much consistency as we can. Travis, what comments would you like to make on the regulatory scheme?
I think you did a nice job sort of covering what we typically see, but I would just reiterate that it is 50 states with 50 different regulations. So you do have, maybe depending on who you ask, 23 states that have adopted some form of the NAIC model. And I say some form because many have taken liberties with it and changed things here and there. So there is not a truly uniform approach across the states within this industry. There's also not a uniform regulator. So obviously we're sitting here with the Bureau of Household Goods and Services talking about service contracts. You may go into another state and vehicle, home, and consumer goods are all sitting in the Department of Insurance. You go to another state and you know, they're all over the place or under the AG. We also still have a handful of states where the products are essentially unregulated. There is no named regulator. There may be what we call define and exempt. So there's a provision in the insurance code that defines what it is and simply says, and this is not insurance. It's just it's a consumer contract like any other. So it really is spread out across the states on how these products actually get regulated. But as Tom summarized here, there's a consistency in what they attempt to regulate. And I always think that financial assurance kind of being the cornerstone, because at the end of the day, when you purchase this product, you're getting nothing right then and there, right? It's all about that future promise to be there to make that repair. So it is critical that consumers are made whole if for whatever reason the company is unable to perform.
Thank you, Travis. And just as Chief Paddock mentioned earlier, California is unique. There's a blurry line between what we call home service contracts and consumer goods. There's a bit of overlap, and we've talked with Chief Paddock and Claire about is there an opportunity potentially to clarify that in some way?
And just to be fair, there's a blurry line in other states as well. I mean, again, a lot of states have uniform regulation of service contracts, but California is the only state wrestling. As we see innovation in the market, I think Justin brought up products where you have conventional home service contract providers that want to cover all the cell phones in a house, and what do you call that? And so there are issues that are coming up because of new technology and innovation in the market, and so California is not alone in dealing with that.
So that covers the slides that we had planned to make available. Chief Paddock, where would you like to go from here? There are things you want to add or questions you want to entertain? Happy to take them.
Sure. So I think what I'll do just before we open it up to discussion from the council is on pages 12 through 15 of your packet is just some background that the Bureau prepared also. And I think what I'll do is I'll just try to briefly summarize a few potential areas where the Bureau is going to look to do more research. Again, I have to emphasize this is going to be the beginning of a discussion. It's certainly not the end of the discussion. And I'll just try to summarize a couple of these items. But it will take me a minute. So the first one is essentially some transparency in service contract sellers and administrators and what you could see during a license lookup. So just to backtrack a little, as Travis mentioned, a service contract seller is the retailer. So I'll go back to that Best Buy model. Best Buy isn't necessary. I don't remember if they have their own, but I don't think they necessarily are the obligor or the administrator, but they are providing the service contract. There's been a couple of instances at the Bureau that have come up where there are service contract sellers, retailers out there that are providing at times outdated service contract agreements and are providing service contract agreements without the knowledge of the service contract administrator. And that certainly is concerning to us. One of the things that we're contemplating would be, should we just have more transparency in the license lookup? And what that would look like would be when you look up any given administrator. So I'm just gonna, we're gonna make Tom the administrator at the moment, we'll make Travis the seller. When you look up Tom as the administrator, you would be able to see all of Tom's current offerings. So he could potentially, there are some administrators out there who have, hundreds of service contracts on file, and you would be able to essentially see a link to the various contracts that are currently on file with the Bureau and able to be used within California. In addition to that, you would be able to see any sort of relationship that Tom would have with any service contract sellers. And so if Travis sells this agreement, we would know that Travis sells it. If I sell it, we would know I sell it. And if Jacqueline is also another service contract seller, but Tom and Jacqueline do not have a business relationship with one another, then you would not see Jacqueline's name appear, so that a consumer, when looking that up, could see when they walked into Jacqueline's store, they shouldn't be seeing that service contract agreement. So it's something that's in the early phases of our discussions, but it's something to keep in mind. And it's very similar to how in the contracting world, contractors have relationships with individuals known as home improvement salespersons. And I think this is most common in the solar industry. There are large companies who essentially have on file with the Contractor State License Board the various individuals who are allowed to sell their solar agreements. And that changes over time. Those individuals come off, come on, and those individuals could have relationships with multiple administrators. So that's one potential concept that the Bureau is looking at and would love feedback on from Tom and Travis, as well as anyone else on the council. Another potential item is what we've already sort of discussed, so I'll be very brief here, which is just really to clarify the space between home warranties, home protection, and what I'll call bundling, for lack of a better term, of various products. So I don't think the Bureau has a good concept of where to draw those lines of demarcation yet. But I will say, I think it's a very clear goal of the Bureau walking to the next sunset to have something to offer as far as specificity here. So we really do want to work on that in the coming months. I'll move on to the next one, which is some clarification of what a consumer is entitled to in the process of undergoing a repair or a replacement. At times, the Bureau enforcement staff and especially the individual analysts in our compliance unit see that service dealers and administrators sort of have a myriad of ways of how they handle the consumer. There's a lot of good actors out there where the consumer is really considered the customer, even though technically the customer in this instance is the obligor. But by that means that the service dealer is providing the consumer with an estimate of what they're going to be doing on the product. They're going to provide them an invoice, and if they're going to replace any parts, they would give the part that they replace back to the individual, which is all customarily drawn out in our law. It's the Bureau's position that that's required whether you're going through a service contract relationship or you're just working directly with a service dealer. But there is an opportunity to make that more clear in our law. So that's another area where we're looking as well. And then last but not least would be clarity to consumers. So one thing that we brought up with Tom and Travis was what, if anything, can we provide to a consumer that would just make the agreement that they're entering into more clear? And I'm going to let Travis or Tom speak to this in just a moment. But on page 15 is a sample of something that we found in the solar industry. And this would essentially be a cover sheet where the terms are laid out of essentially what the deal is. We've redacted a lot just because this actually is a real contract. But it gives you sort of an overall understanding of what like a summary page would look like. But what I will say as a caveat is I'm the first to understand the minute you start adding requirements to a contract, you have to pick your battles, because if you're making more and more things important, you're essentially sort of lowering the volume on all the things you think are important. And so we certainly have to do that balancing act. Those are the areas that the Bureau staff internally have identified so far that we'd like to dig deeper into. But we also want to get feedback from the council as well as the public on any other areas they'd like to look into. And I want to pause here just so Tom can sort of speak to what I've discussed so far.
We hate all the ideas. I'm only kidding. We've had good discussion with Chief Paddock and Claire on these. Just one so far, by the way. We've only had one dialogue. So there's a couple of themes I want to hit, and Travis, you're welcome to jump in. The one is the protection of intellectual property and competition. And we don't know yet what the implications are for this transparency idea and being able to go and just grab a form or see who's working with who. I think given our members' druthers, they would be able to retain that information from an IP and a competition perspective. But we certainly support and understand the objective. The other one relates to the introduction of any new form or language in the industry. You could call this industry maybe the promise to pay industry, which is adjacent to insurance. There's a lot of hand-wringing and countless years of experience, whether that's customer feedback, lawyer feedback, meaning lawsuits, whether that's regulator, legislator feedback that's been baked into these contracts, along with, of course, statutory requirements. And so to the extent that you try to add another form, and Chief Paddock, I think, hit on a good point, which is, are you highlighting something that's important to some consumers, but maybe something important to another consumer isn't so highlighted there, and they miss that. So we get really concerned, we meaning the industry, about creating another disclosure that may introduce unintended consequences just from a liability perspective. And there's, of course, the intellectual work. Once you get it done, it's done. But I will tell you, the supply chain now to get product out is very, very, let's say, cumbersome in this industry, because we have third-party firms that need to approve documentation, generally speaking. And so now that may be something that regulators, policymakers like, well, that's too bad. That's just cost doing business. But it's just something to be aware of. Anytime you introduce more words, it's a significant undertaking. And we just want to make sure there wouldn't be any unintended consequences there. Travis? Any adds?
On that issue, not necessarily. I was going to speak more to the home and consumer goods, the sort of muddied waters.
Yeah, great.
We're wrestling with this question in some other states, as I mentioned, and so I'll just throw that out as a caveat. I don't have the exact answer. I think industry is still trying to figure out exactly what this looks like. But what I would note is that, I think there has to be a way, if consumer goods service contracts and home service contracts remain regulated by two separate entities. What I do not think is the right approach is to make it a list of appliances or goods that go into one category and another set that go into another. If you purchase a home service contract to cover your HVAC and your plumbing, and you want your refrigerator included in that contract, I don't think it is reasonable or fair to consumers to say, oh, well, you now have to bundle this with a consumer goods contract, and this is that part of that your contract is going to be regulated by this other company, and here you're in insurance. And so I don't necessarily have the answer of how we get there, but I think that the world is going to look like a world where you may have a consumer goods service contract on a fridge. If you, let's say, went to a retailer and purchased that fridge and purchased a service contract in conjunction with that retail sale. But you may also have service contract coverage on a fridge if you buy a whole home warranty that includes it. And so, again, I just think that we're happy to work together towards how do you draw those lines from a regulatory perspective, But from the practical perspective for the consumer, I just think that there's got to be a path where something like a fridge, keep picking on fridges, can fit into both categories, just depending on maybe another set of circumstances, whether or not that's, purchased at retail versus existing in home. I'm not sure exactly how you make that distinction, and I'd love to talk more about figuring that out. But what I don't want to see is just this like clear, these products go here, these products go there. I think that's nice for us on the regulatory side because it's clean, but I don't think it makes sense from the consumer perspective.
I think the other challenge is the list can grow, right?
Oh, for sure.
New products come out and then you have to update the list and things like that. Thanks, Travis. Back to you, Chief Paddock.
Yeah, and what I would say as far as the list growing, that's kind of what you've seen sort of over the years with service contract legislation here in California. And so that's why I think we're trying to look for a new approach. So you don't have to have it keep growing through that sort of evolution. But without further ado, I do want to open this up to the council to hear your ideas. Any questions you may have for Tom or for me are more than welcome. So I'll open it up to council members in the room first. All right, I will open it up to council members online. I know Pascal's had to tangle with a couple of these contracts in the past.
He must have won.
Okay. All right, let's see. I'll open it up to public comment here in the room. And Ann, I will open this item up to public comment online.
All right, so if anyone would like to make a comment on this presentation, you may look for the hand icon and click that to raise your hand. You can look for the question mark icon, click that, type the word comment into the text box and click send. Each speaker will have 3 minutes with a 30-second warning. Are there any comments on this issue? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, thank you, Ann.
Right.
And just before moving on, I really do want to thank Tom and Travis for their time. We had a really good first discussion. I guarantee you we're going to have many more as we start working on this, start doing our research. But thank you so much for the presentation.
Thank you for the opportunity.
And then I think I'll move it on to agenda item number 8. We'll do agenda item number 8, which is our council meeting minutes, and then we'll take a 15-minute break just for the sake of everyone in the room here. And so with that, if you could turn your packets to page number 17, that starts our council meeting minutes. And as usual, I'm just going to open this up to council member comment. Did you identify anything you saw in the minutes that that you wanted to discuss? I'll open it up to council.
Yeah, I wanted to discuss comments made regarding the old database and the fact that there still remains permits that have been canceled for more than a year on the live database, which I think is a great confusion for consumers because there's a whole bunch of them that are just the result of people changing their status, and they've done a transfer permit and switch from a sole proprietor to an LLC or a corporation. And those permits that continue to show are far greater than a year, terminated far longer than a year. And your comment at that last meeting was that the statute of limitations, which is 9 months. So if we're asking that after a year, they just be removed from the public facing site so that consumers aren't confused when they look up all reason movers and they see 2 permits, one of which says terminated or canceled and one says active, and all of a sudden that creates a confusion among consumers. Am I making a good choice? Have I gone down the wrong path? I think that for clarity and in the interest of the consumer, it's best not to have those up after a year of that being a inactive permit or a cancel permit more than a year.
Got it. So I think I'm going to take this in two parts, which is the actual underlying issue you're bringing up, and then just the minutes itself. With the minutes itself, did you see anything that looked inaccurate that we should tweak or?
Just boot stomping that.
Okay, got it. Which page was that on? Just so I can take a quick.
It's on page 19.
I just want to take a quick scan of it before I go on to my next item. Okay, and then to your comment of the statute of limitations being 9 months, I could be wrong, and it'll take me a little time after the meeting to look it up. I believe it's 2 years, but I could be wrong. But as far as from an IT perspective, I know we do have this on our list, but I actually do need to work with my counsel. And the reason for that is if I can bring a complaint against a previous entity for however long that may be, I need to be able to see that information on that entity until essentially it would be moot to bring a complaint against them.
So I think you should be able to, I'm not asking you not to be able to see it. I'm just saying remove it from public access, because there's a lot of things that you have that public doesn't have access to. Or I'm assuming there's things you have.
Absolutely.
Just include it in that group.
So what I would say, so let me give you a hypothetical because I think it may help here. So I will assume for a moment the statute of limitations is 2 years.
Okay.
And just because, Steve, we were talking about this before the meeting, we were talking about sole proprietors versus an LLC. And so let's assume for a moment you were a sole proprietor and you became an LLC. And right now when you're doing the license lookup, I can see both, and I can see one is canceled or delinquent, whatever the status may be. Because I did business with you a year and a half ago, I may not know your new entity type. And so I want to look up your old entity type because that's the business card I have. And so that's my one concern. But what I can do, and now I have to write it down, is I need to check what the statute of limitations is with my counsel. And that would be my strong preference is that a consumer is able to see that in license lookup until that statute of limitations has passed.
And I'm fine with that as long as we're not talking about some unlimited time. If we're talking 2 years or less, I can deal with that. Because there's people on here that are 10, 20, 30 years because of all that data dump that came over.
And that does speak to the IT thing. That is on our list. Yes. So we will address it, but I need to work with my counsel about the rules I give the IT department. Yeah. And I will absolutely follow up with you. Any additional members any additional comment from council members in the room? Any comment from council members online? Pascal, please tell me I spelled your name right this time.
You did. I much appreciate it, but don't worry about it at all.
Got it. Any comment from council members online? All right. Any comment from members of the public in the room? And if you could open this up to public comment online, please.
Absolutely. If there are any comments on the minutes, you may look for the hand icon and click that to raise your hand, or you may look for the question mark icon, click that, type the word comment into the text box and click send. Each speaker will have 3 minutes with a 30-second warning. Are there any comments on the minutes? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, thank you. All right, and I think before we move on to agenda item number 9, we will take a 15-minute break. For those counting on the Pacific Coast, we'll come back at 11:50. So I'll see you just in a few minutes. Thank you, everyone. Hi, everyone. We are back. And without further ado, I am going to hand, for agenda item number 9, I'm going to hand it over to next, please, to provide our administrative update.
Thank you, Justin. So my name is Kelly Williams. I'm the administration manager. Since hiring continues to be a top priority for the Bureau, my presentation will focus on Bureau staffing. Please join me by reviewing agenda item 9, starting on page 31 of your materials. Since the addition of the Household Movers program in 2018, Bureau staffing has increased by 44%, growing from 48 to 69 positions. I'm excited to report that the Bureau's vacancy rate is at 8%, and I'd like to recognize our personnel liaison, Marie Goutier, for her hard work in hiring and onboarding new staff. Since the last advisory council meeting, 12 positions have been filled. Enforcement positions include 2 compliance unit analysts, 1 compliance support position, 2 case management positions, and 5 special investigators. The admin unit also hired 2 positions, 1 executive support analyst and 1 support position. We pay close attention to the attrition rate since May 2024 advisory council meeting. 2 staff members have accepted promotional positions outside the Bureau. While content manager Joanne Van will discuss staff engagement activities, I'd like to mention that in September, the Bureau held an all-day new employee orientation and team building event that was attended by over 20 staff members, and that the Bureau had potlucks and team building events in both July and October. As you can see in the meeting materials, the admin unit supports the Bureau by completing multiple contracts and purchase orders. Does anybody in the room have any questions?
I'd say it's challenging with our staffing and our team, and that's very remote.
Thank you. Yeah, the admin teams work really hard.
It's really,
we appreciate it. Yeah. And the managers who have been in countless interviews.
It's time.
Yeah.
It's very time.
Mm-hmm. It is. And it doesn't stop when they get hired. There's a lot of training, as all the special investigators know.
Begins at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. Does the public have any questions? Yeah, council members online, do you have any questions?
Yes, Tom Keepers. Really appreciate your efforts here, and staffing is always a challenge. When I see individuals getting promoted to other areas or kind of moving, up, that's actually a compliment to the department in my mind, because I look at management as, look, if we help you be successful, whether it's in here or somewhere else, we've done a good job, right? Now, that's a challenge because it still creates a vacancy. So that's just an editorial that when somebody gets promoted, it's a good thing, right? I was just curious, the vacancy rate, I think, was it 10% or so? I was just curious, how does that compare to other peer agencies in the state? Anyone have a sense for that?
I certainly do. You're looking at one of the volunteers of the turkey drive yesterday, so I was actually able to talk to a lot of my colleagues. Yeah, we're above par, or we're below par. I guess that's the wrong analogy. We're actually doing probably far better than a lot of our peers within the Department of Consumer Affairs. I know of 2 other state agencies outside the department, and I would say the one that I had a more detailed discussion, they were hovering around 15, and it didn't come up with a different state agency. But yes, I think we're the exception, but I'm excited to be there.
That's great. Thank you.
This is Bert Grimes. Quick question. How long is that the mandated budget expenditure freeze going to last? Freeze on hiring? Anybody have any ideas?
As far as a freeze on hiring, there isn't a mandate from above on a freeze on hiring. We had to identify positions as part of a larger effort within the state that would be wiped away, and that is still, we have submitted a tentative plan, but we're still waiting for final approval on that. The Bureau itself, as a cost saving measure, is pausing on hiring at this point, but that's a decision by both Claire and I.
And can I just add for clarity, the positions that we identified to be permanently eliminated are vacant positions.
Yes.
So there's no layoffs, no furloughs. I want to make sure that that's really clear to everybody.
Yeah. But as far as, so we're waiting on approval of that plan, Bert, but there isn't a official hiring freeze. It's a choice that Claire and I are making as far as pausing on hiring at the moment, because I just want to see how our budget is doing over time. And at this point, our vacancy rate is low, so most of the work is being able to be farmed out.
Oh, thank you.
Any additional comment from council online? Public comment in the room? And Anne, would you mind opening it to public comment online, please?
Absolutely. If you would like to make a comment on the administrative program update, you can look for the hand icon and click that to raise your hand. You can click on the question mark, type the word comment into the text box, and then click send. Each speaker will have 3 minutes with a 30-second warning. Any comments on the administrative update? I don't see any requests for comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, thanks, Anne.
You bet.
All right, we will hand it off to Jacqueline Castro to provide the licensing update.
My name is Jacqueline, and I am the licensing manager for the Bureau, and I'll be reporting on
The sound cut out.
I'm sorry, I hit mute on my pod.
Okay.
All right,
We're going to start over. Sorry about that.
Hold on one second.
I think we've got it.
Okay, we're going to try that again for the third time. My name is Jacqueline Castro. I'm the licensing manager for the Bureau, and I'll be reporting on the licensing statistics found on agenda item 10, page 34. Within electronic and appliance repair for the quarter ending in September 2024, there was a small increase in the total license active registrations due to an increase in service contract seller registrations. In home furnishings and thermal insulation, licenses decreased slightly in the quarter ending in September 2024, with a small decrease in all license types except furniture and bedding retailers, importers, and wholesalers. Within household movers, there has been a gradual increase in the number of new permits issued from March 31st to September 30th. BHUGS is pleased to see the increase in the licensees. The licensing unit has become well-versed in the System Connect, which also allows them to navigate through system issues with more ease and assist applicants in a timely manner. There was 50 household mover exams administered in the month of September with an exam pass rate of 86%. While the Bureau has not provided reasons pertaining to those failures from the testing center, a report was provided that indicated that of the 7 exams that failed, or 7 candidates that failed the exam, 4 were first-time takers and 3 were repeat exam takers. Even with the small dip in exam pass rate, the overall average for the exam pass rate continues to remain at 92%, with an increase in total active permits. As of today, in the Connect system, the Bureau has issued a total of 136 household mover licenses up to date, which is great. There continues to be a steady increase in the total quarterly report revenue. However, please note that because of the transition to Connect and online submission of quarterly reports, there were some delays in receiving and cashiering payments. As a result, the revenue collected in the quarter ending March 31st was unusually low, and the revenue collected in the quarter ending June 30th was unusually high. Licensing is happy to report that the amount of paper quarterly reports received has noticeably decreased, and an increase in online submission has been observed. As requested in the previous advisory council meeting, a chart of weeks to process and conversion chart for ear, hefty, and household movers has been provided starting on page 37, that refer to the average number of weeks before an application or document is initially processed by a licensing technician or analyst after it is received at the Bureau. The weeks to process average includes applications, renewals, service contracts, quarterly reports, and verification of household mover insurance policies. The statistical reporting for processing times was implemented as of March 11, 2024. And as you can see, the weeks to process time has gradually decreased from March to September. In September, the Bureau processed applications for EAR received 1 week ago, renewals received 5 days ago, and service contract administrators received in the last 3.5 weeks. For BUFD, the Bureau processed applications received 1 week and 4 days out, and renewals received 4 days ago. Within household movers, the Bureau processed applications received between 5 and 6 days out, quarterly reports within 1 day due to the decline in paper quarterly reports received, and household mover insurance verifications within 30 days. Before concluding, I would like to mention a few exciting updates to household movers. The Bureau is currently working on the development of a new interstate household mover application, as Claire mentioned earlier in her presentation. That will take effect January 1st, 2025. This application will have differing license requirements than the general application, and the fee will remain at $500. The following will not be required for interstate movers. There will be no residency requirement, but the mover will still need to identify an agent of process in California, and the principal place of business must be outside of California. There will be no fingerprinting, no insurance or bond requirement, no report of equipment requirement, and interstate movers will still need to file a quarterly report, but only the gross operating revenue from transportation of used household goods earned while using California highways and roads. The moving company must be registered with FMCSA, and this will be verified by their Bureau upon application review. There will also be no exam requirement, and the interstate movers will be required to file an affidavit with the Bureau stating that they will not conduct intrastate household moves in California. Lastly, the Bureau conducted a household mover quarterly report webinar on October 11th to help guide movers on registering for a Connect account and filing quarterly reports online. The webcast video is on our website and available for applicants to view. I would like to take this time to thank Lavinia Peavy, our household mover analyst, for a job well done on the presentation, and Joanne Van, content manager, for her assistance, and all my household mover staff for their support with Connect. This concludes the licensing update. Does the council in the room have any questions?
Well, Jacqueline, I'd like to congratulate you and your group on the weeks to process. That's a real significant improvement that you just kind of glossed over and said, you know, we give a little bit. I think that's significant. So I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you.
And I'm taking that there's been no change in the test itself, because this is kind of a big fall off, really. It is, considering where we've been since the inception of the program. This is the first time we've ever had it down in the 80s.
Yeah.
I have some theories on it, but I think that I know that at some point you were looking to modify the test because you were thinking that maybe the pass rate was maybe a little high.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought maybe there'd been some modifications, but none at this point.
None at this point.
No, and when we do, Steve, just because it is going to be difficult to find a subject matter expert, we've already volunteered you.
Yeah, well, I think it's a great job. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any questions online with the council? Okay, Anne, can I please open it up to, I'm sorry, is there any questions from the public in the room? And Anne, can you open it up to the public on the call, please?
Absolutely. If there are any comments on the licensing update, you may look for the hand icon and click that to raise your hand, or you may look for the question mark icon, click that, type the word comment into the text box and click send. Each speaker will have 3 minutes with a 30-second warning. Are there any comments on the licensing update? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
And then I'd like to turn it over to Jacob Ager, the lab manager, who will be giving a laboratory update.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jacob Ager, the laboratory manager for the Bureau of Hospital Goods and Services. First, before kind of jumping into statistics, I want to do a brief update of what's been going on in the lab. To kind of preface some of the numbers that you'll see in the different charts, there has been a little lull in a couple of different areas, mainly mattresses, and then some FR chemical testing. And just wanted to kind of give a little more information of why those are so low. We've kind of shifted focus more towards the thermal insulation side than what you've seen in the past with the upholstered furniture side. So there's definitely a drop off the last quarter on the chart here. And we'll kind of get into that a little more. But just want to let everyone know we're not taking a vacation in the lab. We're doing a lot of the things on the back end, and I'll kind of talk about that here in a second. And last time I kind of talked more about equipment breaking and things like that. We're going to stay a little more positive this time. But I had like a really cool like 70s, 80s style like training montage movie, like of all the cool things we've done in the lab. But it had to get cut, sadly, just for like time constraints, you know. So to start off of like the really positive things, the thermal insulation program for the thermal insulation program in the lab underwent the National Voluntary Laboratory Accreditation Program. That's NAVLAP. I'll refer to it as NAVLAP if you hear any more of this presentation. We had an on-site assessment October 8th to the 9th, and the lab passed with flying colors. The assessor found no findings, and we were able to renew our NAVLAP accreditation with no issues. So this is really good news since we've been changing a lot of procedures and things over the past year. And it's just really good to see that we're still able to stay in compliance even though we're changing so much in the lab. So as I stated earlier in this meeting and last meeting, thermal insulation is a lot more of our focus now. You'll see that in the numbers reflected when we get to the thermal insulation section. But I just wanted to give a shout out to my team for making this accreditation cycle so easy. I'm really proud of where we're at with thermal, and it should be the same just across the board when we get to the furniture side as well next year. Also want to point out that policy enforcement compliance in the lab worked really hard to update enforcement and compliance efforts for lab failures. We're really trying to streamline the process and just make it a lot easier to get samples out. And a lot of that has to do with how we handle lab failures in the lab. So this is kind of the early stages, but I'm really excited for it. It should just make the whole process better. And then it should really help consumers and then also industry compliance as well. And then lastly, the HUFT regulations have been overhauled, and I want to thank Eileen for that. She's made it flow a lot better in the current draft, which I'm sure she'll talk about in a bit. Breaks apart some of the different sections. So currently there's a labeling section and then also the definition section as well. I don't know if anybody has had the opportunity to read through our HUFT regs, but they are a little convoluted. And she's doing a really good job of updating that. So I just want to say thank you. And also, we won't have the revenue stamp anymore. I'm sure that Bert and Pascal will be happy to see that go away. And then now I'll just move on to kind of upcoming deadlines or events for industry. I noticed there's not too many thermal insulation manufacturers, but thermal insulation directory listings are due, or changes to directory listings are due November 15th. So that's tomorrow. Any changes need to go in before then. And then the next deadline for thermal insulation is December 15th, which is for all directory fees and licensing fees. If any manufacturers are out of compliance or do not renew their license in time, they will be taken out of the directory and they will be unable to sell in California. And also manufacturers have been notified a month in advance just to just letting them know that, hey, these are the deadlines and these are when they're coming up. So next thing is a little more positive, I would say. Mark your calendars for next year's IABFLO International Association of Bedding and Furniture Labeling Officials Conference. This will take place in the sunny San Diego, April 30th to May 1st of 2025. And we also expect the Product Safety Commission to attend and give a brief update on CFR 1640 and 1633. So we're excited for that. And I just want to point this out now, and we can circle back to it later, Bert and Pascal, but we were going to provide examples of label failures. And I just want to refer you to page 45 of the October 2023 packet. The minor, moderate, and majors were kind of all listed there. And before I get into the actual statistics, I just want to open it up to council members in the room real quick, and then I'll do online as well. Is there any comments so far, all those updates? Okay, and then I'll open it to online real quick for the council members.
Just appreciate your work. Got the B-Hugs label on a chair. So
there you go. Wow.
Appreciate that.
Well,
I'm kind of blushing right now. Thank you.
Before we go into statistics, I think this is a question for you and Bert, because there seems to be a trend. I know in fashion, I'm starting to see like pockets in odd places, like on shoulders. Are you starting to see like pockets of furniture as well and things of that nature?
We've been seeing zippers for a long time where there's been areas where they can put things.
Like your remote and stuff?
Yeah, I guess so.
Okay. Is that a thing that you're seeing as well, Bert, or not?
I'm not, but it could be a trend.
Got it.
I do have a question, Jacob. If you pick up a piece of furniture, no matter from a retailer or a manufacturer, how long does it take it to get into lab and get tested and to be able to notify the manufacturer, the retailer, whether it passed or failed?
Okay, it kind of varies. I don't have that exact information for you. It's not something I really track for advisory council, but I want to say it's anywhere from 3 to 6 months. We're trying to get it down, but there's been a lot of like tie-ups with just equipment in general. I'm hoping that I can get it closer to a month or 2 months. But just with staffing and stuff like that, it's been pretty difficult. That doesn't really answer the question, I guess, but around 3 to 6 months.
But now I want Jacob to have an opportunity to brag. What was it 2 years ago, Jacob?
Oh, probably like over a year, maybe 2 years.
So
yeah,
Jacob's gone a long way.
Yeah, good. Because, if a product's out there and it's non-compliant, the retailer could keep selling it for 3 to 6 months roughly, as of now. Is that correct? Okay.
Yeah.
Is there any way to shorten that down, or can you specifically see a product that comes in that you can look at it and say that product just doesn't look right? We're going to test that before we test these other 3 or 4 products.
So on the enforcement side, and I think I'm going to just speak for Alda a little bit here. For the special investigators that are going out, there are obvious issues on law labels a lot of the time, where if there's not a registry number or anything like that, they're not picking it up. They're just directly citing the business, and that product isn't able to be sold because of those deficiencies. So it does happen a little bit quicker when there's not actual lab testing going on. But with furniture for TV117, we're not seeing a ton of failures anymore out of the samples that we picked up. So on that side, that's still going to take a while. Again, I kind of hope that I can get it down to 1 or 2 months and just bring down the numbers altogether. It's just we're kind of jumping around to a bunch of different things, and there's a bunch of different, everybody's kind of taking up a bunch of different roles right now while we're trying to transition over.
Okay.
And
Thanks.
just to do, Bert, just to do a plug for the upcoming Sunset Report in a few more years. So when all this team is identifying something that's non-compliant, they can red tag it, but they can red tag that individual product in that particular retailer at that time. But what we're going to be trying again to do, which was in our previous Sunset Report, is allow the red tagging of a product to happen statewide when we identify an issue. And so we're going to be working on putting that in our Sunset once again, which would look more like almost a recall that you'd be more familiar with on the federal level. So just sort of stay tuned. We are going to work on that.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any other comments online from council members?
I do have a question following up on what Justin just said. So would the recall be for furniture, for example, that is deemed unsafe, or would you do a recall for even minor violations?
The way that again, I can't get too ahead of myself because I have to go through several levels of chain of command. But my guess is this will look very similar to what was proposed in the previous sunset report, which is available on our website, and that would be serious violations where you actually have a health concern. Yes.
Thank you.
So essentially, like no URN, that may be one if we're seeing a particular product. If we're seeing like a non-disclosure of something that was a filling material inside, a serious flammability fail, things of that nature.
Thank you.
And also, the failures in the lab, when we notice that something's failing, it kind of gets pushed to the top. It is just to try to speed up the process. There's a lot of things that we are testing or passing for flammability or any testing that we're doing really in the lab. It's mostly caught up like the label failure side. So, which I'm not going to say isn't important, but it's definitely not as like, it doesn't affect a consumer as much as their chair catching on fire easier or anything like that. Okay, if there's no other comments, I'll kind of move on to the statistics here. We'll start here on page 39 of the packet. This is for our lovely Technical Bulletin 117-2013. It is still California's smolder resistance test for materials used in upholstered furniture. And over the last 8 quarters, we've only had one failure for TB 117-2013, which resulted in a 99% pass rate. And this was over 114 samples. There still is a little asterisk on the bottom chart here, and then also, or on both of the charts. This asterisk is to kind of explain the goofy numbers where you're seeing the 29 and it's actually 30. This would be inconclusive samples. So there's one inconclusive sample in December 31st, 2022, and then 3 in the quarter ending with June 30th, 2023. And just to kind of reiterate what an inconclusive sample is, it basically means that it didn't either pass or fail, so it wouldn't be reflected. So we have to do additional follow-up to see if it actually passes or fails, if it's actually possible to be tested, if it's not just a one-off product. So again, they don't affect the pass or fail rate at all. Now, looking at the second table here on page 39, this is TB 117 failures broken down by manufacturing locations. So there's only one failing sample in the quarter ending in March 31st, 2023. And this was from a manufacturer that was outside the US. There isn't really any concerns here other than the product failing. There's not really a trend that we're seeing. Overall, everybody's passing TB 117-2013. So that's really good news. Now moving on to the next page, page 40. This is going to be 16 CFR 1633, or the federal government or the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission's open flame test for mattress sets. Over the past 2 years, mattress failures have hovered around a 39% failure rate. The failure rate continues to really be a concern for the lab. And you might see some zeros here, and I'll kind of explain in a second. But the lab has continued to meet with CPSC to discuss trends that we're seeing and how to get manufacturers into compliance. And we also expect that with the introduction of Assembly Bill 1059, which bans fiberglass, that mattress failures will increase throughout the industry. So we're trying to start ahead of it actually being implemented. So after talking with CPSC, the Bureau really reassessed mattress sampling and compliance efforts that we were taking. So we've switched to a more targeted sampling, which would be focused on consumer complaints, industry complaints, new trends we're seeing, or just follow up with bad actors. We are still doing some random inspections as well, just pulling random mattresses, but we will start to shift more towards the targeted side. And as you can see from the last 2 quarters, now that we're actually looking at the chart here, there's kind of a standstill with testing. And I talked about in the last advisory council meeting a little bit earlier that we are currently dealing with aging equipment or broken equipment. We've kind of ran into issues with some vendors and things that we've received from vendors not being the right equipment or having to go out for calibration or some issues there. So it's really slowed down the process. But we are also exploring just totally replacing the burn room equipment And we are going to start the bidding process for the burn room pretty soon here. So hopefully I have some updates for the next advisory council meeting. So now that we're looking at the charts here, there's not a lot to talk about with the two quarters listed here, but overall the 39% pass rate is something that we are genuinely concerned with. And as in the second table here, this is manufacturing locations for saline mattresses, and most of the samples in the last 2 years have been picked up from U.S. manufacturers. That's why there's a heavy, there's more failures listed for U.S. manufacturers than outside. And you'll kind of see this with thermal installation as well. Okay. Now turning to page 41, this is going to be a lovely segue into our next topic here, thermal insulation. This is, again, where we've really shifted our focus. As you can see, the numbers are going up. For the last 2 quarters specifically, actually the last 4 quarters, we really shifted focus here. In June 2023, the lab implemented a new protocol to increase thermal insulation testing by sending out thermal insulation sample requests every June and December. So there will be one in the next month or so. We are seeing a failure rate here of 30%, and most of this is coming from R-Valley results with a few corrosion failures as well. So in the second table here, this shows per manufacturing location, and 8 out of the 9 samples that failed were manufactured in the U.S., with 1 sample failing from outside the U.S., and this is mostly due to thermal insulation samples being sold in California or coming from other U.S. states or in California, with a few exceptions in Canada and Mexico. Turning to page 42, which would be bedding. Bedding has a 57% pass rate. The lab is in the process of finalizing some guidance for finish size and net weight measurements. And we hope that these are posted to the website by the end of December. I'm hopeful with that. We are finishing up on our end, and it'll just need to go down the pipeline a bit. So after the industry's had some time to review the guidance, we will start implementing enforcement for bedding products. And then bedding failures are pretty split across the board here. There isn't really any manufacturing location that's worse than others. It just seems like it's all over the place. So, and now turning to overall testing, this is on page 43. The lab has a 77% pass rate. Furniture is actually the one that's kind of keeping it up. Mattresses, bedding, and thermal insulation are the biggest factors for compliance issues in the lab, and we have kind of shifted our focus, especially in the last quarter or 2. So moving on to the flame retardant chemical labeling and testing, this would be on page 44. We're still seeing that manufacturers are listing that their product does not contain FR chemicals. There are a few exceptions with manufacturers not checking a box at all, but it doesn't happen too often. And looking at the second table here, we have samples analyzed by DTSC with the no added flame retardant chemical statement. The numbers are a little sporadic here. FR chemical testing is really expensive, and we're trying to work on ways to really streamline the process. We're trying to identify new ways to screen samples so that we have a better idea going into sampling which samples could violate the AB 2998 and SB 1019. So we plan to test about 4 samples per quarter and getting on a more regular schedule. I think I've said this a couple times in the past couple council meetings, but hopefully by the next one I'll have something to show for here. And then moving on to the last last page here, this would be label review, which starts on page 45. This chart's always a little alarming. It's alarming to industry and then also to the lab. So we're going to spend a good minute here talking about it. So just to reiterate the different types of results, we have pass, minor, moderate, and major. So I'll start with pass, which is on the second, the graphic on page 45. This would be in dark green for passes. This means that your label was perfect and you read the rules and regulations, good work. And a pass note would be sent to the business and the manufacturer stating that your label was in compliance. Also, a reimbursement letter with instructions of how to be reimbursed would be mailed to the business inspected as well. Now, the light green would be minor violations. This means that your label had an issue, but it was nothing too concerning. This could be a spelling error. It could be that a statement had an extra "the" in it. Business will be inspected, or the business inspected will be notified that the product passed but had labeling discrepancies, as well as the manufacturer will be notified as well. And then it will almost be treated like a pass, but there'll just be that label discrepancy where the business inspected will still receive product reimbursement. Now, moving on to the major violations, which is here in yellow. This means that your product was deficient, something like you had a bunch of minor violations, or there was something more deceiving to the consumer. Claims of 80% polyurethane foam and 20% polyester fiber batting, but the percentages were closer to 50-50. So a significant difference in percentage. The business inspected and the manufacturer will be sent a non-reimbursement notice and discrepancy notice saying exactly what was wrong with the label. And then we also on that form, it basically tells you what you need to fix for the future. Now, for in red, this is major violations, and this means that your product was completely out of compliance and needs to be fixed. This could be that filling material wasn't listed on the law label or something more severe than that. And in this case, the lab's going to hand it off to compliance, and then enforcement action would be taken on the product and the business. So as you can kind of see on this chart here, on both charts, you can see that the pass rate where a label had no issues is only about at 22%, and with minor violations being at 23%, moderates being at 40%, and then 15% for major failures. So 55% are so far out of compliance that they will not be reimbursed. And you can kind of see that graphic a little better on the second graphic here on this page. So we hope that a lot of this will be this will be fixed with updated regulations and guidances going forward. But there are still going to be some issues that need to be addressed in the industry. So that kind of concludes my part. I will open the floor to council members in the room if anybody has anything. Yeah. All right. And now I'll open it to council members on WebEx.
No questions from me. Just thank you for the presentation and the very helpful information. Thank you.
For the record, that was a thumbs up from Tom.
I did see that. That was very nice. Along with the label example, I appreciate it. Yeah. Okay, so I will open it to public comment in the room if there is any. Nope. All right. And then, Ann, can we open it up to public comment on WebEx?
Absolutely. If anyone on WebEx would like to make a comment on the laboratory update, you may look for the hand icon and click that to raise your hand. You can look for the question mark icon, click that, type the word comment into the text box and click send. Each speaker will have 3 minutes with a 30-second warning. Are there any comments on the lab update? And I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
All right, now I will kick it off to Alda, the enforcement chief.
Thank you, Jacob. Let me turn on my camera. So good afternoon. My name is Alda Aguirre, and I'm the enforcement chief with the Bureau of Household Goods and Services, and I'm going to provide the enforcement program update. The information I'm going to be discussing starts on page 47. So as I get into the information I'm going to be sharing, I'm just going to give a review of what the enforcement program consists of. And there are 4 units. The compliance unit that handles the intake of complaints and handling of desk investigations. The special investigations unit in the north that handles field complaints and inspections. And that's not solely in the north anymore. That covers the Northern California counties along the coast down to the northern part of Los Angeles. And then there's a special investigations unit in the south that handles cases from Kern County all the way through San Diego and through the desert. Then we have our case management team. And the last time we had advisory council, that team was just 1 person. And now, thanks to all the hiring, we have 3 employees in that unit that help with scheduling citation review conferences, processing citation orders, reviewing the work that's submitted, providing statistics, and supporting the supervisors for the units. I'm very grateful for that team. So next, I'm going to go over some investigation highlights. I'm going to start with the Attorney General referrals. So in June of 2024, we made some referrals to the Attorney General's office, 1 for electronic and appliance repair, 1 for home furnishings and thermal insulation, and another for household movers. We did receive a default decision and order on June 2024 against an electronic and appliance business for revocation of the license. That was a business that had locations in Montclair and Rancho Cucamonga. The allegations were false and misleading records provided during our investigation and failing to provide written estimates to the consumers. For those referrals to the Attorney General's office, we had in October of 2024, an accusation was served against a household mover seeking to revoke the license, and that business is located in San Diego. We also had a home furnishings and thermal insulation accusation also served in October of 2024 seeking to revoke a license. That business has multiple locations, and the allegations against that business are falsely advertising or misrepresenting merchandise, failing to make furniture deliveries within a reasonable time or make a refund, and failing to have a valid license. And that business was located, their locations were located in Northern California. We currently have an electronic and appliance repair accusation that is in the final stages of review, and that is to revoke the license on a Fremont-based business for failure to provide estimates and repairs and failing to provide records for inspection and operating with an expired license. The Bureau's enforcement program has continued to cooperate with other agencies and partners. We've continued to have quarterly consumer fraud task force meetings where we meet with other agencies to discuss strategies, cases, and trends. We've continued to have meetings with San Diego agencies, the Central Valley, which is Kern County, Fresno, and Northern Los Angeles, and then San Bernardino County also. Next, I'm going to the top of page 48. We've also been collaborating with the California Highway Patrol in discussing some household mover inspections that were conducted and some cases that we're investigating. We've shared strategies and some of the things that we've come across comparing interstate movers and intrastate movers, and those are movers that conduct operations entirely within California and then movers that move to and from California to other states. Next, I'm going to move on to discussing our memorandum of agreement with the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration. And we've continued to meet with them regularly. We've developed procedures on addressing interstate moves and federal violations. I'm happy to say that we issued our first federal citation earlier this month for to a mover who conducted a move from another state to California. During that move, they were not authorized to conduct a move, and they refused to cooperate with our investigation. They were issued a fine for $37,400 for that move. Next, I'm going to review the sweep and sting operations. So we've conducted, since between April and the end of July, we conducted 4 sweep operations going out to businesses that were unlicensed or who failed to renew their license. And those sweeps were conducted throughout the state. We also conducted a sweep of a business who opened locations throughout California without registering or without obtaining a license with the Bureau. During that sweep, we cited 15 of the locations and then communicated with the business who applied for a license after that sweep was conducted. Next, I'm at the top of page 49. Oh, hold on a second. Oh, actually, yeah, at the top of page 49. But I will say that I'm happy to announce that, led by Supervising Special Investigator Travis Cook, the Bureau of Household Goods and Services conducted a household mover sting operation with the assistance of Department of Consumer Affairs Division of Investigations and the Ventura County DA's office. We conducted the sting in Ventura. We booked 5 appointments. We had 4 of the businesses show up. Based on the information that we obtained during the sting operation, we were able to put cases together against 5 moving companies. And 4 of those businesses are unlicensed. And during that sting operation, we also had the assistance of the Supervising Special Investigator for Southern California, Raleigh Jacoby, and the team consisted of investigators from Northern and Southern California. So now as I review page 49, I draw your attention to, we do provide information on the cease operations letters that we've sent out to businesses that are operating unlicensed. So we're not just citing businesses, we are sending them notices to let them know we're aware that you're operating and you don't have a license. So you have an opportunity to comply. Our Bureau has also developed the collections program, and I'm very excited about that because our case management team is working on that. And the collections program is to follow up on citations that were issued and remain unpaid. So the beginning of October, 32 businesses were contacted with their first notice. They will receive, after the first notice, 2 additional notices to pay the outstanding fine. If they fail to comply, they can be referred to the Franchise Tax Board or the Department of Consumer Affairs Collections Program to collect the fines. Now I bring you to the bottom of page 49, where we highlight consumer and business assistance, and we provide details on different cases that we just chose to highlight during this advisory council. The savings to the public, we were able, between April 1st of 2024 and the end of September 2024, we were able to save $52,747 for the public. And that was through the assistance of the cases we were handling. Next, I bring you to page 50, where we provide information about the table that's going to be it's on page 51. that lists the complaints received and investigations initiated. And so before I start to go over these numbers, I do want to thank Joanne Van for assisting. We had our online complaint form. We had an online complaint form that for electronic and appliance repair and home furnishings and thermal insulation, and then a separate complaint form for household movers. Joanne was able to assist us in developing a complaint form that was easier for the public to understand, and we believe that's why we've seen an increase in complaints. So if you look at the table, you see that over the last 2 quarters, we've received, well, for electronic and appliance repair, you see we've received 482 complaints, and that's a jump from the previous quarter of 315. Now, I will note that 330 of those were non-jurisdictional cases or cases that were closed without investigation, and it's because we don't have jurisdiction over what their allegations are, but we do provide resources to those consumers so they can go to the correct agency and get assistance. For home furnishings and thermal insulation, we did see a small decrease, but if you look over the past quarters, we've seen decreases in those areas, and we just monitor to make sure that there's not a problem there with filing those complaints. For household movers, you can see three quarters ago, we had 79 incoming complaints. The quarter where we made the update to the complaint form, we jumped to 184. And then this last quarter, we had 143 complaints. At the bottom of page 51, we provide an introduction to the next table, which is investigations. And these are cases that we've received a complaint on and that have been assigned to staff. And as you could see, because of the volume, we have an increase in electronic and appliance repair cases, and a small decrease for home furnishings and thermal insulation. But you can see the increase for household mover complaints. And so over the last 3 quarters, you definitely see an increase. And for household mover complaints, we investigate all those complaints because with household mover complaints, it takes a bit of an investigation to even determine if we have jurisdiction. And then we are also able to provide assistance to those consumers in other ways. Now I bring you to the bottom of page 52, the enforcement program citations assessed. And on page 53, there's a table and there's a new row on the table. I think Advisory Council asked for this information in the past. So we have the row with citations issued, the amount cited, and amount collected. And you can see an increase for electronic and appliance repair, an increase for home furnishings and thermal insulation. And there is a decrease for the household mover citations issued. However, I will say that during these months, we had the new staff come on board and they were in training. So we had the new staff being trained, and then some of our current staff was providing that training. And so they start as part of the training program to learn electronic and appliance repair visits, inspections first. And then they do home furnishings and thermal insulation next, or they cross over. And then the last program they work on is household movers. Even though there's a decrease in citations for household movers during the last 2 quarters, I can say that during the first part of October, between October 1st and October 25th, we already saw 14 household mover citations issued. And those were not part of the sting operation. And next, I bring you to page 54, where we provide the table that we started to provide during last advisory council, for lab failure statistics. And before I go into the numbers, I do want to say thank you to Staff Services Analyst Rachel Lanzone. She's helped me with putting this table together and processing the lab failures. She's been instrumental in helping us put this information together, and not just that, processing, doing the research, and setting up training for others on the team so that moving forward they can assist with those lab failures. But you can see during the first quarter, we had lab failure citations issued 19 and lab failure cases completed 26. And during the last 2 quarters, the numbers lower, 9 and 17. And the reason for that is the first period captured lab failures from 2023 and the early part of 2024. So it's a longer time period, as opposed to the last couple of quarters only cover the lab failures that we received at that time. All right, so now I'm moving to page 55. So again, I'm going to thank Joanne Van for this. So, you know, she helped us with the complaint form, which we are very happy that it's helping consumers, and our compliance unit is really happy also. They're happy with the way they're receiving the complaints. But Joanne is also helping us with our webpage. And this is something that's come up in the past, where we currently, the way our website is set up is we have the citations page and disciplinary actions. So that's one page on our website. And then if you're looking to find out if a mover is licensed, you go to a different part of our website, and that's the license search website or page. And so what we've proposed and Joanne's been working on is to put both the information for both on the same page, so that when a consumer is looking for a mover, they can look up to see if they're licensed, and then they can go to the next section. And the proposed is at the bottom of page 56. It's a collapsed version, but you can search for a business, and then directly below that, you have the citations and disciplinary actions. So you can go and click on the little arrow, and then you turn to page 57. That'll show you the expanded version. And that's what the public will see, a list of businesses that were cited. Now, I do want to make sure that the public understands that there is an appeal period for citations. So these citations are posted quarterly, but we make sure that the citations that are posted are affirmed, which means that the appeal period has passed. And so those citations will be listed there. And for disciplinary actions, it's a list of the cases that we've taken administrative action against, along with the link where you can click and access those accusation documents. So that's what the proposed page is going to look like, and it's going to, we believe, help consumers when they're searching to see if a business is licensed or not. And that concludes the program update. Do council members in the room have any questions?
Yes, I do. So definitely, I mean, I have some concerns about that last item and the linkage of enforcement action to licensing directly, particularly if we're talking about all, as the enforcement regs come into play and we're citing people for very minor violations. And so I could envision a situation where bigger movers that do a lot more volume, that have small infractions, particularly something like an important information booklet or something like that, those show up, and I'm concerned how the consumer is weighing that in making a decision. You know, for example, if you go to the BBB, the bias is against the larger companies because anywhere from 5 moves to 250,000 moves is in the same category. Yeah. So if I run 100 trucks and have 5 complaints, it's very different than someone that runs 5 trucks and has 5 complaints. So that's my concern about what the level, I mean, if we have egregious violations, definitely, everybody, that should all be up there. But I'm concerned about the minor violations being in that database.
Your tariff class is going to be important.
Well, and I can address that. So I will say during our investigations, we do take those things into consideration. So when we're conducting an investigation, we are aware that there are large companies who we're going to receive more complaints against. We get that now. And what we do is we go out to meet with those businesses and we provide the list of complaints we've received and how they're resolving it. So citations, that's not all we do. We provide outreach. So we're not looking to focus on the little minor violations. We're focusing on consumer protection and helping our licensees. So the larger businesses, they may have some citations, but it's not going to be like a citation for minor things if we have the opportunity to make the correction through outreach. And, you know, I think, like you said, there are other, I'll say other websites that don't account for that. And they don't provide information. And that's probably something that we can make a note of, that we can put information on our website that explains, you know, that citations vary and the amount received, because like I said, that's how we receive complaints now. And we're not issuing a revocation on a business that received 20 complaints when we see that the business has 5 locations and is doing millions in moves. It just, that's not, we're looking at consumer protection.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And that being said, now I'll speak out the other side of my mouth, which is something I've been asking the leadership for a while for, and that is press releases. And if press releases, even a redacted press release, is of so much benefit, if you don't want to or feel unable to list the name of the company, if you just list that a sting operation been conducted, 4 different entities were cited, and these are the particular violations. That is such a valuable educational tool for legitimate industry and others that I think that there should not be waiting anymore for press releases. The press releases should start to be issued, even if you're going to redact the name of the violators. Because, I mean, ideally, people that are unlicensed that are doing really bad actors, that information should be broadly distributed. But even just the information about this is what they're doing, because historically that has been such a great educational tool, because I republish all that stuff. Yeah. And people contact me and say, "Ooh, I didn't realize I shouldn't be doing this." And it's a teaching moment. So I think that's real valuable.
So a couple of things there. One of which is any sort of disciplinary action, once the accusation or in some instances statement of information is filed with the Office of Administrative Hearing and it's served on the individual in question, it's a matter of public record. So there's no need to redact anything. You can say, you know, Steve Weidekamp's a bad guy at that point. But there's a couple of moving parts to press releases that the Bureau still sort of needs to work out. One thing that we could consider, and we could just discuss more offline, is perhaps like a social media post when those disciplinary actions go up. Because you could essentially, I can't believe I'm saying this, you can retweet it or get it out there on your various feeds as well. And you'll be able to see the entire accusation. So the Bureau's case is essentially right there of what the business is being accused of. And so that can get out there immediately, because that is a matter of public record. I think the Bureau is going to need a little bit more time when it comes to formal press releases, but we can look at social media more quickly.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
And that being said, I appreciate the effort and applaud you for the sting operations. So we've been wanting that a long time, and we've got a couple starts and stops. Hopefully now we'll be on a more regular pathway with that.
Thank you.
I'm a cheapskate, Steve.
So does Advisory Council Online have any questions?
Yeah, Keeper's here. Appreciate
yes,
the, sorry?
One second, Tom, and then.
So on the sting operation, that's fantastic because it helps the rest of us that are doing it the right way, add more credibility. But I was just wondering, how did you source the leads for your operation? Or did you have kind of a booklet that you knew of some bad actors?
So I'll share limited information.
Oh.
So I'll share this, that when we find a mover, our first attempt is to contact them. I'm saying unlicensed mover. Our first attempt is to contact them and have them cooperate with the investigation, because maybe they don't know they need to be licensed. Once they've avoided us, or if there's a case where they're not cooperating with an investigation and there's consumer harm, they're pretty much at the top of that list.
Okay.
And then when we schedule these sting operations, we're looking for movers that the consumers have access to. So where they advertise online. So we act like consumers moving, and it's online. We call, any way, even word of mouth.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them are word of mouth movers. So we get the information and we keep a list. And that's the list we use for our contacts. Does that answer your question?
Because I know I see them online as well. So that's great. I was just wondering how you found them.
Thank you. All right. I think, Tom, you had a question?
Yes, thank you. A comment and question. First of all, congratulations. It's always nice to know when you enhance a consumer interfacing piece of software, they actually might use it more. In the complaint area, I saw the note there in your comments. I had a question on, in the report, there's a referral to the ear businesses quite a bit. And I wondered if it's appropriate to, and maybe this needs to be done separately, I'm thinking about the fact that the administrator counts are pretty flat when you look at licensing, it's plus or minus 80. You have a lot of sellers coming in, as was noted, and to a lesser extent, some of the dealers. And I wondered if it would be helpful to articulate more precision in the ear businesses. And I know this is a BHUGS report, and it is public information, though, right? And so I'm just thinking about that precision might help, I'll say on the one hand, kind of protect the brand reputation, let's say, of a group of administrators, if in fact they're not in that group, but it might help to more target, hey, we're seeing a lot of sellers here and that's where we're having the issues, or we have a lot of service dealers at repair facilities that are giving us issues. Thanks.
So I appreciate that, Tom. I think because I want that too. And when we've had conversations about how we run statistics, this is actually going to harken back to sort of the comment Travis was making. When a complaint comes in, when especially a service contractor is involved, it takes months to figure out who actually did the wrong. Was it the obligor? Was it the administrator? Was it the retailer? Or was it the service dealer? And it's almost at the end of an investigation, you could actually go back and populate sort of where you would check that box as far as who had the issue. Sometimes it's multiple people are having the issue. But yeah, so I've sort of asked Alda and case management to do that, but it is tricky.
It is. And also when we're doing an investigation, especially if we're dealing with somebody who's not registered, we, at that point, only know their operations by way of that complaint. So we might think that we're addressing a certain type of business and we can't put them into a category because they might cross over to other businesses. Like we have home furnishing and thermal insulation businesses that are selling service contracts. So there's a little bit of crossover there. And so is this a warranty issue? Is it a service contract issue? Is it that the seller overpromised, or is it that the administrator is not providing the assistance they need? Or is it just the service, the the person that went out to do the repair, were they not licensed, or were they licensed and didn't do a good job? So those are all the different moving parts that that go into what we're looking at.
Okay. I guess I'll need to take solace knowing that Justin and the team are, when they're proposing policy changes, they're getting precise enough, and you have all these insights that you can't statistically just spit out on a report. So I'm saying that with a little tongue in cheek, but I do mean that. So thank you very much. I appreciate your efforts.
Right. So what we're trying to look at, Tom, is sort of, this isn't the right word for it, but I don't know how to call it, like an after action. Sort of like when you actually close the report, because we gather our statistics for the most part on the front end. And so we're talking about some sort of after action, and that Alda and I are going back and forth on what that looks like. The compliance unit is almost done, essentially getting trained up as we speak, just because, again, that goes to our hiring. And that's essentially something that we're going to visit. We have not started tracking those stats, but with the understanding that in 2025, we really do want to start talking about these policy things. That's what we're trying to move forward, just so you're aware. I just don't quite know what it looks like yet.
Appreciate that. Thank you both.
Right, thank you. Does anybody else have any questions? All right, now I'll open it for public comment in the room. Questions? Thank you. Online, does the public have any questions?
This is the moderator. If anyone on WebEx would like to make a comment on the enforcement program update, you can look for the hand icon and click that to raise your hand. Or you can look for the question mark icon and click that, type the word comment into the text box and click send. Each speaker will have 3 minutes with a 30-second warning. Are there any comments on the report? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, please do. Thank you very much, Anne.
You're welcome.
All right, that concludes my presentation. And next, I will pass it on to Joanne Van.
Thank you, Alda. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Joanne Van. I am the content manager. I lead the Bureau's efforts in outreach events, publications, video, social media, website, and overall communication efforts with the public. There have been several notable outreach projects since the last council meeting, one of them being a video that we published that provides an overview of the Bureau. It covers the industries that we regulate and the work we do in each of those areas. And we'll take a few minutes of this meeting to play the video right now.
We are the Bureau of Household Goods and Services, or BHGS. We protect California consumers by regulating industries that are part of your everyday life. Have you ever hired a household mover? Gotten your phone fixed? What about having bought a sofa? Well, all of those are regulated by us. BHGS oversees licensing and enforcement in 5 different areas: household moving, electronic and appliance repair, service contracts and extended warranties, upholstered furniture and bedding, and thermal insulation. Before you hire a business in any of these industries, visit our website to check if they have an active license. Household moving. We ensure that household movers follow laws and regulations protecting consumers. Businesses that move household goods within California need to be licensed by us. For moves into and out of California, these movers need to be registered with the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, or FMCSA. Electronic and appliance repair. We also license businesses in California that repair or service electronics or major home appliances. This includes televisions, personal computers, phones, refrigerators, washers, dryers, and more. Service contracts and extended warranties. BHGS reviews all service contracts so that they meet California's consumer protection requirements. Anyone who sells or issues service contracts in California must be licensed by us. Upholstered furniture and bedding. Businesses that wholesale, retail, sanitize, manufacture, or import upholstered furniture and bedding must be licensed by us. BHGS reviews items such as sofas, chairs, mattresses, bed pillows, and more for proper labeling. We also conduct tests to ensure that they're as advertised and meet flammability standards. Thermal insulation. BHGS is responsible for making sure that thermal insulation products sold in California perform at the level stated by the manufacturer. Thermal insulation manufacturers also need to be licensed by us. By regulating these key areas, the Bureau of Household Goods and Services protects Californians in their everyday lives. You can find more information about us on our website at bhgs.dca.ca.gov, where you can check a license, contact us, apply for a license, file a complaint, and more. Thanks for watching.
All right. There is some lag on that video, so if it was a little bumpy for you, sorry about that. But it is on DCA's YouTube channel as well as on our website if you wanted to watch that on your own time as well. We're really excited to have that video for the Bureau, and we also have another video in the works focused on consumers hiring a household mover. It covers tips for hiring a mover and how to avoid scams. This video is being made in collaboration with DCA and is in its final editing stages. And as a reminder, all of our videos are on DCA's YouTube channel, the Bureau's website, and our social media. For publications, we posted one focused on helping consumers become more familiar with service contract transactions.
Thank you for your patience. It looks like the meeting room was disconnected accidentally or had some technical issue. We will be back in a moment. Thank you for your patience.
If you want to raise your hand.
Hi, Ann. We were having some technical difficulties. If you could promote our conference line.
I do have the phone number promoted. And are you able to hear us?
Yes, thank you, Ann. Can you hear us?
Yes, we can.
We apologize for that.
No problem.
All right. Thank you for your patience. For those online, can I ask what you last remember hearing from me?
There was an upcoming video introduction.
Sorry, you were just starting to go
Video.
into applications.
Saw a great video. Thank you. Yep. Very well done.
All right, I'll go over the publication again. So for publications, we posted one focused on helping consumers become more familiar with service contract transactions. It covers the jargon used, consumer rights, and what to do if a problem comes up. This was posted on the website in both English and Spanish. It gets printed and distributed at outreach events and promoted on our social media as well. Also posted on our website are instructions for registering for a Connect account and filing quarterly reports online. These are to help guide movers who might need some extra assistance with transitioning to the online platform. These instructions were mailed to movers along with invitations to a live instructional webinar, which Jacqueline mentioned earlier in this meeting. We also posted an industry advisory on the Right to Repair Act, what it covers, and manufacturer requirements. You can find this on the website in both English and Spanish. Early this year, the Bureau began posting weekly on our social media in English and Spanish. Topics posted range from week to week, and we try to cover all of our audience types under each of our regulated industries, whether it be a reminder of license fee schedules for licensees or a notice to consumers on what types of complaints the Bureau can help with. If you turn to page 60 on the packet, you'll find a chart with our follower numbers for the past 4 quarters. Year to date, there has been a 10.9% increase in Facebook followers, 7.8% increase on Instagram, 30.3% increase on LinkedIn, and 33.3% increase on X. Also on page 60 of the packet are examples of graphics that we've posted over the past few months. Earlier, Alda mentioned the new online complaint form that can now be used for any of our regulated industries. Previously, it was 2 different forms that users had to navigate through depending on the industry their complaint fell under. The new form provides users with the option to add multiple businesses, to attach documents, or to remain anonymous if they choose to. Alda also mentioned the citations webpage that we are redesigning, and that redesign is part of a larger effort to fully redevelop the Bureau's website. We want to make it easier to find essential information while maintaining ADA compliance. The overhaul of the website is currently in its drafting stages, and we will be working with DCA to finalize and implement a design. If you look on page 61 of the packet, you will find a mock design of what the website homepage could look like. It has features such as quick links, latest announcements, and quick ways to connect with the Bureau, among other improvements. Between June and October of this year, the Bureau participated in 12 outreach events. Please excuse the typo in the packet. These events included a strike force meeting with the San Bernardino County Deputy District Attorney's Office, senior scam stopper events in collaboration with the Contractor State License Board and state legislative offices, community resource events, as well as a live webinar for household movers on how to use Connect and common mistakes to avoid. I'd like to thank Lavinia PV, who hosted the webinar, and also the Solid team at DCA for their help in facilitating it. I'd also like to extend my thanks to the staff who represented the Bureau at outreach events the past few months. These staff members are Oliver Manila, Christopher Heron, Mary Lee, Alana Orjakovsky, Larry Perlman, Nancy Torres-Montia, Tracy Cortina, Destiny Wells, Maria Rodriguez, Aaron Bertoni, Tina Bilodeau, Teray McKinney, and Nicholas Ching. Lastly, with the Bureau's vacancy rate dropping from 40% last year to only 8% this year, we continue to prioritize a strong internal communications plan to promote a transparent and collaborative workplace. We distribute a monthly newsletter to update staff on Bureau matters, and surveys are sent to collect staff feedback on what we can do better and how. We also hold all staff meetings every 6 months as an opportunity for everyone to touch base as a collective unit. That concludes the communications and education update. Are there any questions from council members in the room? All right, questions from council members online?
Yeah, this is Keepers. Thank you for that overview. I was just curious what kind of metrics you guys are evaluating in social and web?
Right now, we're mainly tracking our follower count. We don't get much engagement in terms of likes anyway.
Okay. Thank you.
Is there a specific statistic that you would like to track?
Oh, I don't, I was just curious kind of where you're at. I mean, we're tracking things like impressions and engagement duration and things like that. So, but you know, again, there's a different, you'd want to design the metrics around what is it that you want. I was just curious what you guys are up to. Thank you.
And I'll just add really quickly, this is Claire, that I think because we've only started posting more regularly since Joanne started, I think the big achievement is just to see the increase in the number of followers, and then going forward, I think we can start collecting more statistical information. The other thing that we had talked about tracking that we don't right now is the number of views on the videos, because Joanne's been working really hard to put together videos, and so it'd be good to have a sense of, you know, what the viewership of those videos. So we have talked about that.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, Joanne, this is Bert Grimes again. You talked about right now you're doing an internal letter for inside the Bureau, within the Bureau. Is there hopes that possibly the Bureau can start internally or externally communicating with the licensees of what's going on, what the Bureau's working on?
So, Bert, I think that actually falls to me, because for a while I was trying to get it out to council and I still haven't done it, and that's basically just a workload demand thing. We haven't had long conversations about some sort of outward-facing newsletter. We certainly can, but I'm not quite ready to make a commitment on that yet, just because I know a huge amount of Joanne's time is going to be devoted to our website overhaul that she was referring to. But we can put it on the list for more longer term.
And
thank you.
I will, yeah, and if I could just add to that, a lot of the social media posts, I think Joanne mentioned in her presentation that we do try to balance messages for consumers, applicants, and licensees. So we are mindful of that. I think too that because of the transition to connect with the household mover application, in terms of reaching out to licensees, a lot of her work has focused on the household mover group, getting the information out about the online applications and then the quarterly report. And so I think as we transition, as we finalize household movers on Connect and transition to EAR and Hefty, there'll be more opportunity for outreach to EAR and Hefty licensees than she's had the capacity to up until this point. So I just add that for a little more context.
Any other questions from council members online? All right, questions from the public in the room? Anne, can you please open it up for public comment online?
Absolutely. If anyone would like to make a comment on the communication education update, you can look for the hand icon and click that to raise your hand, or you can look for the question mark icon, click that, type comment in the text box and click send. Each speaker will have 3 minutes with a 30-second warning. Any comments on the communications update? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
All right, I will pass it off to Eileen Yap for the legislative and policy update.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Eileen, and I'm the policy manager for the Bureau. I will be providing the legislative and policy updates today. You can find the items listed on page 64 of your materials. So first, we have the household movers enforcement regulation update. I'm happy to share that these proposed regulations were published on October 10th, and also posted on our website, where you can find all documents related to this rule package, including the notice, the rule text, and the initial statement of reasons. We are now in the next phase of the rulemaking process, which is the comment period, and which will continue through November 25. During this period, any member of the public may provide feedback. Following the comment period, and if all goes to plan, we are hoping that the regulations will be approved for adoption by the Office of Administrative Law by early next year and become effective in April. So next we have the upholstered furniture and bedding law label regulatory proposal, which Jacob briefly touched on during his presentation. At the last Advisory Council meeting in May, we shared an updated draft of these proposed regulations in the meeting materials. We also shared the updated draft at the IAPFLA conference in April. Following that meeting, we received feedback from our Advisory Council members, Bert Grimes and Pascal Benyamini, and we thank both of you again for reviewing the draft and providing your suggestions. We also received feedback from other industry members and state regulators. We used this feedback to make additional changes, and in September, we sent a revised draft to our DCA Regulatory Council. Her review is the essential next step in the rulemaking process. She did finish her review. She reviewed for legal sufficiency, necessity, clarity, and other legal standards and requirements, and we recently received her comments and suggestions. We're currently in the process of reviewing her feedback and expect to make additional changes to the draft. Next, we have SB 1451. Jacqueline briefly touched on the impacts of this bill during her presentation on interstate household movers. SB 1451 is a bill that clarifies the Bureau's authority to license interstate household movers. Specifically, you can find changes in the law on Section 23 of the bill, and you can find these in the material starting on page 66. As Jacqueline described, we are in the process of implementing SB 1451, specifically the new interstate household movers license application. SB 1451 removes certain barriers that prevented the Bureau from exercising its authority to license interstate household movers. Specifically, it waives the residency requirement for interstate household movers and requires applicants who will only conduct interstate moves to submit an affidavit to the Bureau stating that they will not conduct intrastate or moves within California, which Jacqueline has also touched on. SB 1451 becomes effective on January 1st. Next, we have AB 2210. We provided some information about this bill at the last Advisory Council meeting. This is a bill that would have established a pilot program authorizing DMV to require courts in certain counties to order the installation of a certified ignition interlock device following a DUI conviction. This bill has since died. So I also would like to briefly talk about the household movers licensing regulations. It's not on our agenda, but we wanted to let the Advisory Council know that we will begin drafting these proposed regulations this winter, and that we may be circulating a draft for review and feedback early next year. These proposed regulations will clarify and establish licensing requirements for household movers. So that concludes my presentation. I would like to invite any comments from Advisory Council members in the room. No? And from council members online? Okay, no comments. So I would like to invite any comments from the public in the room. I see no comments, no member of the public in the room. So I will now ask Anne if you can please open it up for any comments from the public online.
Certainly. If anyone would like to make a comment about the legislative and policy update, you may look for the hand icon and click that to raise your hand, or you may look for the question mark icon, click that, type the word comment in the text box and click send. Each speaker will have 3 minutes with a 30-second warning. Are there any comments on the legislative and policy update?
Okay, thank you. I'm going to turn it back to Justin, who I think will be covering the next few items on the agenda.
Thank you so much, Eileen. All right, agenda item number 15. This is the fun one where everyone gets their calendars out. So I'll give you all a moment to sort of search for your calendars. Again, the Bureau is looking to schedule its meetings for 2025. On page 69 is just a calendar of 2025, so you have that for reference for next year. I think it worked fairly well this year for a May meeting. I'm hoping to do a May and October meeting just because November we start flirting with the holidays a little bit more, and so it gets a little bit tricky. And so I'm just going to shoot out a few dates. Referencing our staff council has some unavailability. So
May she's open.
yeah. So just shooting one out. Oh wow, actually, wait, isn't the Ides of March? No, it's Ides of March. Never mind. Okay. How did Thursday, May 15th look for everyone? And council members online, you're more than welcome to just chime in.
Here.
Good.
All right, we're doing contract law here, Tom. Silence is acceptance.
Justin, that doesn't
All
work
right.
for me, but I'll be at a college graduation then.
That's okay. Let's see if we can make it work out. Just out of curiosity, how does Monday, May 8th work for everyone? I think CMSA's convention conference is in April. Is that right?
In April, yeah.
Thursday, May 8th. Thursday, May 8th. How does that look for everybody?
Works for me.
It's actually better for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Justin, I will tentatively say yes. I do have a final status conference for a trial that's going to go later, but the case may settle. So I'll say yes, and then if I need to excuse myself, I'll coordinate with you.
Okay. All right. So we will tentatively set our first one for Thursday, May 8th. What I can almost promise, and Pascal can probably confirm, anytime you have a trial date that far out, that date's changing. Okay. So now turning to October, I'll just shoot a couple out here. Wait, hold on. My counsel. We're okay. So you want towards the, let's see, how would Thursday, October 23rd work for everyone's schedule? Steve's got a thumbs up.
Good.
We have our agent convention.
You have your what?
Our Allied Van Lines convention is that week.
How would the 16th work for you, Sarah?
I wouldn't probably be able to come in person because we're gone for about a week. So I think we leave that weekend of the 18th, and then I'm gone the full following.
Would you be okay joining online on the 16th?
If that's okay with you.
That's perfectly fine. How does the 16th work for the council online?
Good.
I got a thumbs up from
Works for me.
Toby. All right, so Thursday, October 16th. All right. This is a noticed item, so I just want to give an opportunity for public comment. So just as a reminder, before I open it to public comment, what we've got tentatively is Thursday, May 8th and Thursday, October 16th. Any comment from the public in the room? And Anne, if you could open it up to public comment online.
Certainly. If anyone has a comment about the future meeting dates, you can look for the hand icon and click that to raise your hand, or you can click on the question mark icon, click that, type the word comment into the text box and click send. Each speaker will have 3 minutes with a 30-second warning. Any comments on the meeting dates? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, the last formal item on our agenda today, and I'll open it up, but we'll go out of order for this one. We'll do council members online first. Anything you'd like to discuss as a future agenda item in 2025?
Nothing for me, sir. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we have an agenda already working with you and the team, Justin.
Perfect. Yep. All right. For council members in the room, any agenda items you'd like the Bureau to touch on next year? Okay. Any members of the public who have any agenda items they'd like the Bureau to consider in the future? All right. And Anne, if you could open it up to online.
Absolutely. If anyone would like to suggest a topic for a future agenda item, you can look for the hand icon and click that to raise your hand, or you can look for the question mark icon, click that, type the word comment into the text box and click send. Any future meeting topics? And I do not see any requests to comment. Shall I close that?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, everyone, I certainly appreciate your time. I know it was a bit of a longer meeting for us, but thank you. With that, the council stands adjourned until next year. Thank you again for your participation. I hope you have a great holiday season.
Have a great time, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.